Calling to order the October 1st, 2024 special meeting of the 40th Council of the City of Berkeley. Ms. Mitchell, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Black.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gavin.
Here.
Councilmember Hennon.
Here.
Councilmember Patterson.
Here.
Councilmember Vellani.
Here.
Mayor Dean.
Here. Our first order of business is the approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved. Support.
Motion made by Councilmember Patterson with support from Councilmember Baker. Are there any changes or additions? Seeing none, Ms. Mitchell, please call the roll.
Black.
Yes.
Gavin.
Yes.
Hennon.
Yes.
Patterson.
Yes.
Vellani.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Dean.
Yes, tonight's agenda has been approved. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm opening public comments. Seeing none, closing public comments. Ms. Mitchell, please read the item on tonight's agenda.
1, interviews, matter of interviewing city manager candidates, Kalfani Stevens, Crystal Van Vleck, and M. John Dean.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. I will, at this point, turn it over to Mr. Vitrino to begin the interviews and take us through this process.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to present your 3 candidates this evening. We will present them one at a time. First, they are in order of your packet that's in front of you. You also have 3 question sheets in front of you. The way I would like us to ask the questions, if council is okay with it, I'll ask the very first question, which the candidates have been provided in advance. It's an opportunity for them to introduce themselves. And then if you're comfortable with it, we would just go around the table and we'll assign them now a council member asking a question. So each council member will ask 1 question. And a couple council members will get to ask 2. Don't get too jealous of each other. It's okay. You'll note there's a couple that I've suggested follow-ups for. This is really at the discretion of any council member. If you don't think that the question was answered with that follow-up included, please feel free to follow up as printed on the sheet. If you have questions for the candidates that are off the sheet or you would like to ask for a clarification, I would just ask that you respectfully get the attention of the mayor to ask that clarification. I will say we are on a relatively tight timeline. We're going to stop right near 60 minutes for each candidate. So your follow-ups, I would suggest if they're urgent and you have a need to ask them, please do. But if we get close to the end of that time period, I will cut off the candidate interview right when we get to that time. I'm not super stickler on every candidate asking the exact same questions, but I'm very clear that an equitable amount of time will be spent with each candidate. I will ask the very last, it's not a closing question, it's just asking if they have questions for you. I will reserve that question if there is time. They may not have an opportunity to ask you questions. I know that is an opportunity for them to reveal questions they may have, which can inform you, but again, we're going to stick to the time for each candidate. Having said that, if you're comfortable with it, I would just like to kind of go down and maybe we start with the mayor and then go to her left so mayor would have question 2, Steve question 3, Dennis 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, mayor 9, and then 10. Is that okay?
Yes.
Please review your question. If you're not satisfied, that's okay. And we will each ask the same question of each candidate. We'll just keep that order going. Mm-hmm. This is for the public who will view this in recording or is viewing it live. This evening we'll be interviewing all 3 candidates. We will close the meeting quickly after we interview. The council will have received a lot of information. They will also, city council members and the mayor will also receive feedback forms that are available at the meet and greet this afternoon that the public attended. Feedback forms are also available this evening if any member of the public wants to give some feedback to council. That will be collected by myself and will be provided to the city council members by close of day tomorrow so they can have it for deliberation. In addition, the department heads of the city had an opportunity to have a casual meet and greet roundtable with each candidate, and they have also been provided feedback forms which will be delivered to council before close of business tomorrow, so you have that feedback. There'll be a recording of this, of the 3 interviews that I would encourage council members to view after the meeting. Often when you're in the meeting, you're thinking of your question, you're thinking of your next response, and it's sometimes really nice to be able to go back and watch it on video. So you certainly will have that opportunity, and the recording should be made available at the latest tomorrow. Then you will return to your council chambers on Monday at 5:30 for a special meeting to deliberate and hopefully identify your preferred candidate. So that's the process we're entering this evening. Does any member of City Council or the mayor have questions for me?
I have just one.
Yes,
These packets are ours.
Correct.
Okay.
These are for you. They're your note pages. You keep them as you would any of your city council documents. And I won't be collecting them just as you use them. You'll see that there's a scoring column on the right. You use that as a tool if you see fit. You don't need to collect them. You don't need to be held by anything that you write on these papers. It's a tool for you to be able to discuss and deliberate at your next meeting. Thank you for that question. Any other questions? No? All right, we're going to have our first candidate come to be interviewed. Ask a question, and that first one gives you a chance there. This is your seat. Thank you, Kalfani, for joining us this evening. Sometimes we have the candidates go around and shake everyone's hand. We're not doing that this evening. If you don't mind, though, I know you have nameplates, but if you don't mind going around and just introducing yourself very briefly, just so Kalfani can settle in and hear your voice before we start questioning him. So, Mayor, if you want to start, and then we'll come right around the table.
Sure. Good evening, Kalfani. I'm Mayor Bridget Dean, and I'm happy that you're here with us this evening.
Thank you. Greetings, I'm Steve Baker, and likewise, I'm thankful for your time this evening. Thanks for coming out.
Dennis Hennon, thank you.
Clarence Black was elected almost a year ago, November 2023, sorry.
Greg Patterson, welcome.
Thank you.
Jess Villani, excited to hear from you.
Thank you.
Hi, Ross Gavin. Good to see you.
Yes.
All right. Well, Kalfani, thank you very much for being here this evening. I'll ask your first question, which you've received in advance. We've asked you to prepare a 3 to 5 minute statement or presentation that introduces yourself and the reasons you believe you'd be successful as Berkeley's next city manager. The floor is yours.
Thank you, James. Thank you, City Council, for agreeing to have me come tonight. It has been a wonderful day getting to know the residents, getting to know the staff, having some more time to actually get around the city. Kalfani Stevens, so who am I? I'm a seasoned government administration professional. You all have my resume, but some highlights or experiences off of there. I have experience with DDAs and the Main Street program. I actually was in the city of Pontiac when we had the NSP2 program, and I was able to successfully influence them to redirect funds instead of spreading them across the city to put them specifically in the DDA, which resulted in the Lafayette Lofts program, which was really the catalyst to what you see starting to happen in downtown Pontiac now, with a lot of redevelopment of loft space over the businesses down there. I have state level experience, having worked with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation and made a lot of contacts at all different levels in the state. Obviously, I have lots of experience at the municipal city level, City of Pontiac, City of Flint, City of Farmington Hills. I've got lots of budgeting experience. When we did the roundtable interview earlier today, I explained that one of the things that I did my first go round in the city of Pontiac was estimated our revenues for the Tax Increment Finance Authority to within 3% of our actual collections. It's a long process, but that was a lot of fun. But a lot of budgeting experience. So all of that is who Kalfani Stevens is just from a, managing government perspective. But there's a lot more than that. So experience. And when we talk about experience, usually people want to talk about their work experience, but you've got my resume, so you've seen all of my work experience. I want to just talk about life experience, right? So I have the experience of living and working abroad. So as a student, I went to France and I was there for 6 months. I went back to France and taught English as a second language. But the interesting thing about my experience in France, it's great, it's so wonderful, you lived in Europe. Yeah, so I did get to experience what it's like to live in another country, but more specifically, I got to experience what it's like to be a true outsider. And what do I mean by that? So my first name is Kalfani, but if you speak Arabic, my first name is Khalfani, and it's spelled that way. And because of my skin tone, because of my hair texture, when I'm in France, I am and also because I speak fairly good French. So I am automatically perceived as a person of North African origin, also assumed to be Muslim. A really funny joke, when I was there, someone asked me what was my favorite food, and I said pork, and they just could not understand. It really took about 4 minutes of back and forth before they were like, no, really, I'm not Muslim. But because of that automatic perception, I got to experience what it's like to truly be on the outside looking in as a immigrant, right? So I had that experience. I'm a college professor, so I actually teach a budgeting class at the University of Michigan, Flint online. And so I know the struggles of trying to help a student who, trying to make them comfortable, making sure that they understand the information at hand, but not just because, somebody is paying you to do it, but because you actually want to see them succeed. I am definitely a family person. So if you saw my resume, you saw that I spent 2 years in Georgia. What the resume doesn't explain is that for those 2 years, I was a super commuter. Every Monday, I got on a plane and flew to Atlanta. Every Friday, I got on a plane and flew back to Detroit. I did that for 2 years, every week, except for 2 weeks that were planned events where I had to do things on Saturday in metropolitan Atlanta. I got 2 high schoolers. One is in the early college program at OCC, and he is loving it. The other one is a junior and trying to figure out what college he might possibly want to go blue. And I've got 2 huge dogs. One is a Commodore, so those are Hungarian sheepdogs, and the other is a Newfoundland. I got hobbies. Travel. I love to travel. Been to most of Western Europe, a very good portion of the Caribbean. I'm going to the United Arab Emirates this January for my wife's birthday. That was actually an anomaly. We had some credits that were going to expire, and we had to figure out where we could go for the amount of credits that we had, and so that's where we're going. Language, you already know that I speak French. I also speak fairly good Spanish. I read German. There was a time when I actually read Latin, but that time has since expired. I love art in all of its forms. I'm definitely a liberal arts major, and gardening. That is me.
Thank you, Kalfani. I think the mayor's going to ask our first prepared question.
Based on your research and understanding of the city, what do you believe are the most important opportunities and challenges for the city in the near term, and how would you approach these?
Thank you, Mayor. So, based on what I've read and the discussions that I've had and driving around and getting to know the city, I would say that it is a 100-year problem or issue, and that is the city is right around 100 years old. And so things have been going relatively well, but we have deferred maintenance. And because the average person does not understand how a city actually operates, the challenge and the opportunity is educating the public about what to do for the next 100 years. If we are going to have a thriving Berkeley 100 years from now, what are the choices that we need to make today? That's actually what has drawn me to the idea of even wanting to be the city manager in Berkeley, because from the outside looking in, if you're just casually familiar with metropolitan Detroit, Berkeley is a great suburban community, close-knit, walkable neighborhood, and you just assume, oh yeah, great, nice property values, everything is smooth. But under the water, there's a duck's feet moving like this. And so the issue, the opportunity is how do you educate the residents to get them on board to move the city forward? Because if anyone in here is a property owner, a roof has a lifespan, and you can see the signs of stress, and it's not a problem. It's just signs of stress. But then there's a leak, and it's not a big deal. It might be annoying, but you fix the leak. But if you don't fix the leak, it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where now you're not fixing the roof. You're fixing the roof, the wall, and all of the rest of the water damage. And that is the opportunity and challenge of educating the residents so that we fix the roof now and not the water damage later.
Thank you.
Hello again. Hi.
Hello, yes.
Yay. How would you describe your management and leadership style? And as you do so, please identify both strengths and weaknesses to your management and leadership approach.
Thank you. So I would describe my approach as being fairly much of a coaching approach. I believe that everyone needs to be lauded for all of the things that they do that are right. So you definitely have to support. And when things are good, you need to let people know that things are good. You have to let people grow and experience things for themselves. If you never let someone struggle, they can't grow and they can't learn, right? If everything is always laid out for them perfectly. So you have to allow opportunities for stretch. But at the same time, you don't want to set people up for failure. So you have to curate those stretch opportunities. And you use those stretch opportunities to give feedback about, hey, this is what you did right in that situation. This is what you could have done better in that situation. So that's the easy side of coaching. The harder side of coaching is when it's not just a simple, this is what you could have done better, but this really went wrong, and having to understand and work with that person to find out, well, why did it go so wrong? Like, what was it that you did, or why did you make the decision that you made, and trying to put in the right processes and steps to make sure that that decision doesn't get made again. So, that's the part that no one likes to talk about. I like to think that I am fairly successful in leading people to their own self-discovery, so that more often than not, they self-select out of situations as opposed to having to be encouraged to no longer be in that situation. But mostly I would say my style is of coaching. I will also say that there is a certain amount of servitude in my leadership style, in that people have heard me say, I really believe in not being the smartest person in the room. I believe that professionals exist for a reason, so you hire them, you give them the space and the tools they need to do the job that you hired them to do. So I really do advocate for my staff to have the resources to do the job. And whenever possible, if that resource is me, I step in and do that. So when Emily was taking me around today, we were coming back, and there was a couple that was clearly looking for something. And I don't work at City of Berkeley, but I told Emily, I was like, hey, let's stop, and you need to ask them where it is that they're looking for and trying to go. But like my original desire was just to say, hey, excuse me, like, where are you trying to go? Because that's just what I do. Is there is no job in the organization that is beneath me to do. If the floor needs to be mopped and the janitorial staff is already doing 5 things and they don't have the time or the bandwidth, then I'm going to go mop the floor because that's what needs to be done.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Great. What do you consider essential in relationship between a city manager and the city council, and how will you facilitate a productive relationship with city council?
Great question. A relationship is a relationship, whether it be between manager and council, whether it be between friends, spouses. It's a relationship, and what is important in a relationship is trust and honesty. And so the way that I have tried to curate my relationships between the executive side and the legislative side of whatever organization I've been a part of is just to be 100% honest with them. As I was talking with someone before, there is a difference between spin and tact. So you can deliver information and be tactful and be courteous and thoughtful in your language, or you can deliver information and intentionally allow the receiving party to misconstrue what you've said, right? So that is spin. And I really just don't participate in spin because I find it to be unhelpful in curating a long-term relationship.
Spiritus inco agimus is Latin for the spirit in which we act. In that spirit, as city manager, you will face requests from various stakeholders, residents, city council members, or community groups who may want things that are not feasible or are inconsistent with the city's agreed upon strategic goals. Can you provide an example of a time when you've had to say no to such a request? How did you approach the situation, and how did you ensure the individual or group still felt heard and respected?
Wow. It is very rare that I get a question where I think I don't have an immediate answer for that question, and you have provided that question. That is no small dog in that question. Okay, so a situation where I've had to say no and still salvage the relationship is essentially the spirit of the question?
Yes.
Okay. So I get to say no a lot, unfortunately. Usually, however, I will say that in saying no, I don't feel like there is a salvaging of relationship that has to happen. So I'll just go through an example of a no and how I explain the no and how I do what I do. So at the city of Pontiac, we are currently working on, we have a lack of space, to put it mildly. So we have been growing the staff, and in doing so, we have had to find creative ways to reuse parts of City Hall. Well, the newest reclaimed part of City Hall, everyone wants. I mean, the building department said, can I move in there? The planning department asked to move in there. Engineering wanted to move in there. And so I had to say no to all of these groups. And so for some amount of time, the space was finished and ready to move in, but it was empty. Now, it was empty because I knew I had two individuals who had to go in that space because there was no other space that available for them in the city of Pine Acres. So they weren't relocating. They were completely new hires, a completely new division. But I didn't want them to go in there alone. So I was holding off on that space until I could actually put enough people in there that I felt that it was a safe space for people to be in, because it was on the ground floor of the building, doesn't get a lot of foot traffic, and I just didn't feel comfortable having people in there by themselves. So when I finally did open up that space, I had to explain to everyone else, all right, you have an existing space, and I understand that you're not happy with your space, and these are the reasons, you've told me the reasons why you're not happy with it, and these are the things that we can do to help you at least make the space that you're in right now comfortable for the time being. So I allowed them to say, hey, if you want to have the floor redone, we can have the floor redone. If you want to get some paint on the walls, we can get some paint on the walls. And part of the reasoning for that is that we are actually currently in the midst of trying to determine, so this is a short-term thing, figuring out what spaces in City Hall we can reclaim. The building itself has years of deferred maintenance. It's estimated on the low end to be an $11 million investment to bring that facility up to modern standards. And so before we invest that $11 million just to bring it up to modern standards and still be short on space, we are looking at the potential of what other facilities can we actually invest in to have the space needs that the space requirements that we need. And so just sitting down and explaining, again, just honesty, explaining with them why I was holding off, why I told them no, why I made the decisions that I made. I think most of them, really understood the long-term vision.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How do you hold direct reports accountable for projects and responsibilities that you've delegated to them?
All right. This is an interesting one. So generally, it is a time-bound issue, right? So here is activity X. It should be done by date Y. Date Y comes around. The activity either is or is not done, and then we have a conversation about great job, thanks for getting it done, or hey, what are all of the reasons that you didn't get it done, and why? So there are assumptions that are being made in that answer. So the assumption that is being made in the answer of it didn't get done by Y date is that you did not give me forewarning that it was not going to get done by Y date. So Y date comes around and, hey, why did this not get done, right? This is an issue. Let's make a different assumption, which happens more frequently than the first, and that is an assignment is given, assignment X, it's due by date Y, and on some time before date Y, some reasonable amount of time before date Y, the report says, hey, here are all of the reasons why date Y is not going to be met for this item. Do you want me to take these other items and move them down the chain, or do you want me to move date Y to date Y plus 2 days? Generally speaking, I hope that I have created a work culture where those conversations are happening frequently, and people feel free to come and say, based on the workload that you've given me, that particular task needs to be moved, or we need to take other tasks off the table. Usually that is the response that we have. From time to time, that is not. From time to time, we actually get to date Y. There has been no conversation. And then we, again, have to talk about hey, well, why isn't this done? All right, well, it's not done because you were working on these 4 other things that were a priority. And we have the coaching conversation about saying, okay, well, the next time that this is an issue, you need to let me know that the workload is too much, and we will work to determine what the priorities are. Or it could be that the workload is just always too much, and we now need to look at a completely different schedule and perhaps bringing in a new resource, or a new resource could be more manpower. It could be a new automated system, right? Just a new resource to help with time management. It could also be that the workload is in fact just too much, and some of this workload actually properly belongs in another department, and rebalancing that way. But I think that is a long way of saying, generally speaking, I try to create an environment where if something is going to be late, we have a relationship where we can talk about it and determine, is it going to be late, or are we going to change other priorities? And when that doesn't happen, the accountability is actually to document these things, to have coaching conversations, and hopefully those same behaviors do not reoccur in the future. You're welcome.
All right. So while recognizing that fiscal policy is set by the City Council, please describe your approach to being a steward of public financial resources. And please provide specific examples from your past experiences that demonstrate your ability to implement fiscal policy and proactively manage a public budget.
Great question. All right, so I got a couple of answers for that. Let's start with the city of Flint. So in Flint, I was the economic development director and also assistant city administrator. And so as I was doing my work in economic development and working very closely with the city administrator, I was looking at the fact that the city was on a path to state receivership once again. And it was simply because the burden of an unfunded pension program was crippling the city. Just the city had kicked the can down the road so far that even though it was using fund balance to make those payments, it was at a point where it could not, in 2 more years, it could not play that card again. It was either find a new revenue, there were a couple options, find a new revenue source, totally restructure debt, or go back into receivership. Those were essentially the options. And so while it was officially the fiduciary, the city council's responsibility to figure that out, and it was definitely not my responsibility as economic development director to figure that out, I worked with the finance director at the time and a financial consultant to put together a plan and a request that ultimately ended up being passed by the state government that resulted in $750 million to municipalities across the state to help them bail themselves out of their pension programs. And the city of Pontiac, what I'm working on right now is been working very closely with the city council and the mayor. Again, we talked about the fact that City Hall has a lot of deferred maintenance. Well, it's not just City Hall, our court building. So City Hall, the court building, the sheriff's substation, the lack of a DPW building. We have a very large capital need and not enough money. We also are in the midst of building a new recreation facility. So I have worked with the city council, the mayor, a financial advisor to put together a preliminary plan that shows how we can take the fund balance that we have now, make a substantial payment on the recreation center, use ARPA dollars, and bring in a bond to pay off the rec center. So the rec center is off the table, but we still have these public buildings that need help. So we have identified a building that meets the requirements, is inside of our fiscal ability, and we are working now to see if we can land a plane on a purchase of that building that will at least in the immediate future put our DPW in a great position. But in the long term, we are exploring the possibilities of the space in that building that does not need to be used for DPW. Can it be used for those other activities? And if so, then what do we do with the land from those other activities?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Well, thank you so far for your answers. Really appreciate it. So if selected as a city manager, can you tell us how you would approach building trust and respect of the elected officials, employees, and the community? And can you address each of those groups specifically?
Yes. So the simple, straightforward answer is what I've said before. It's honesty. I think you can tell by my answers, if nothing, I am just an honest person. I have found that it is not worth the effort of telling falsehoods. So the very, very plain answer to your question is just by being honest and direct. Specifically with council, what I try to do, and I can tell you that I often fail because of a miscalculation of what is important. But what I try to do is make sure that the legislative branch is kept up to speed with whatever is important. And the reason why I say I fail is that given all of the things that come across my desk in a day, there have been times when I think something is relatively benign, it just is, and the council has thought that was, well, wait a minute, why didn't you tell us about that? I give you a great example of one of those. The city of Pontiac filed some information late with the federal government, and so we got a letter from the federal government and a potential fine. Well, the fine wasn't levied yet. It was a notice like, hey, you filed this late, give us some explanation. And so to me, it was like, well, it's nothing yet, and it might actually end up truly being nothing given all of the other things that were coming across my desk. City council heard about it through a different venue, through one of the employees who was involved in that process, and was like, hey, why didn't you tell us about this? Like, because it's nothing, right? But so what I try to do is keep the council informed of just things that are happening that I think are going to be of importance to the council. The way that I do that currently is not every Friday, but most Fridays, I do a letter to council, and I've been doing this with all of my with all of my legislative staff since Farmington Hills, and just saying, hey, this is what happened this week. And being an open book. And so if anyone ever calls me and says, hey, I heard about this thing, yeah, absolutely. I'm, again, open honesty. With staff, it's slightly different, same concept, but we do have our weekly staff roundtables. And in those weekly roundtables, I really stress the importance of sharing what is happening in your department with everyone at that table. And the reason being a liberal arts major, I really believe in the idea that everything is connected. And you don't know, you may not have the vantage point to know that the thing that you are doing is actually important to someone else, but when they hear you say it, they go, oh, I needed to know that. And so I try to make sure that my staff members are having that open, honest communication amongst themselves, and really to encourage that. And then the third was the public.
Yeah, the community. Yep.
Yeah, and so with the community, it is all hands on deck, using every facet of communication that we have. So we have council meetings where we can get communication across. We have the public access channel. We obviously have social media. We've got flyers. We've got all of those different things. But even with all of that, being present in the community, showing up at community events, right? So it's a 9-to-5 job to be in the office and manage things day to day, but it is not a 9-to-5 job to be the city manager. It is a 24/7 job, because there are going to be, if you're going, I need to take a tangent, sorry. When I was in high school, I was the captain of the swimming and diving team. And I won't bore you with all of the reasons, but the diving coach was no longer coaching at my school, but said, hey, all of you divers, I will continue to coach you, but you have to come over to this other school. And I originally went over to the other school for 3 sessions, but stopped. And my high school swim coach was like, whoa. Why are you back here? You need to be over with Don practicing diving. And I said, I'm the captain of the team. The team needs me here. If I'm going to be the captain, I need to be here with the team. And so that is the same thing about being city manager. You can't be city manager from a desk. You have to be in the community.
Can I do a quick follow-up?
Sure.
On that? All right. Thank you, first of all, for that answer. Just a quick follow-up. So, and this is certainly not a local government issue, right? This is something. The question I'm asked is not specific to local government. So I'm curious how you would try to address misinformation provided by stakeholders, whether it be at a public meeting, whether it be on social media. And can you also kind of speak to the personal attributes that it takes to handle such an interaction?
Yeah, great question. So the first is, people are going to people, and we just have to accept that there are going to be times when there are individuals who, for whatever reason, are going to attempt to sow disinformation. And it's a very fine line, but what we don't want to do is get into a continual back and forth, tit for tat, he said, she said, right? So someone says something, you correct the record, they say it again, you correct the record, they say it again. At some point in time, continuing to correct the record makes it seem as if this individual might potentially have something that is worthwhile and factual. So there has to be a way and a point in time in which you say, hey, you know what? This is the factual information. These are the sources of this factual information, and we are not going to engage further in this back and forth. Now, this is me speaking plainly to you, because I'm not a communications professional, right? There is a way to say that and deliver that, and that is where, again, professionals exist for a reason, and you let them do their job.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes.
How do you ensure that the needs and concerns of the community are incorporated into the city decision-making processes?
All right. So this is a age-old question, but it is, again, a very simple answer, but simple is not always easy. And so that is to have exhaustive opportunity for the community to participate. And I have to stress exhaustive opportunity, because there tends to be a silent majority. And we can't always, no matter how many carrots we dangle, we can't always entice that silent majority to show up. But if we make sure that we have given them every opportunity. So we've We've got individuals who prefer to be tactile and in person. We have individuals who want to do it electronically. We've got individuals who prefer to receive a questionnaire, right? We have to exhaust the opportunities so that everyone we have communicated to individuals in a way and given them access to participate time of day, right? Do we do things between 7 and 9 so that people can drop in before work? Do we do it between 9 and 5 when we're all in our office? Well, if we're in our office, they're probably in their office. Do we do it between 5 and 7? But, people have to pick up their kids from school. So exhausting the opportunities, changing the times, changing the places, changing the methods so that everyone has an opportunity to be involved, and then getting feedback on that. So you do that, you get the decision, you do that, you get the information, you make the decision, you move forward, but you circle back around and you say, hey, this is the process that we used. Did it work for the community? And again, it goes back to the exhaustive opportunity, right? We know from marketing that only if you get a 2% response on your surveys, woohoo, you're doing great. We have to figure out how to really up that survey response and make sure that we are talking to everyone, or at least getting a good representation of the community to know that, hey, what we're doing is reflective of what the community wants. Because I can have all the best intentions in the world, the council can have all the best intentions in the world and be planning for the next 100 years. But if we have a staunch, diehard group of residents who say, we hear you, we understand, and we only want to plan for the next 30 years, I think we're going to be planning for the next 30 years. Because at the end of the day, we serve them.
Thank you. And as a follow-up to that, please describe a situation you've handled where the community faced a contentious issue with strong, diverging opinions, and what did you learn from this experience?
Oh, okay. So there are many of those. Well, no. So, a simple one, and goes back to if the community wants to plan for 30 years, we're planning for 30 years. Just recently in Pontiac, we had a heated discussion about the roads. And would we do a millage to fix the roads, and what would that look like, and everything? And I will say that was a very contentious decision as to whether or not we should even put the question on the ballot, right? So there were some residents who were very excited and were like, yes, let me say what I want to say about this. Put it on the ballot. Let me vote. Now, I don't know if they were wanting to vote because they wanted to vote yes, or if they were wanting to vote because they wanted to vote no, and they wanted to be like, look, I told you no, don't send this to me again. But they were very enthusiastic about wanting it on the ballot. There was another group that was very enthusiastic about not wanting it on the ballot. We ultimately ended up not putting it on the ballot, but I think we ultimately ended up putting it not on the ballot because we had not done a proper education campaign. So those who wanted it on the ballot, let's assume that they were all pro fix the roads. Those who didn't want it on the ballot, we will assume that they were all anti fix the roads. Neither one of them had a solid grasp or understanding from the city's perspective, from the executive or the legislative branch, about what it would actually mean. So we had a very, very high level, hey, if we do a millage, if the millage is this much money, this is how much it would be in extra taxes. That was it. We didn't have a true discussion about what is the average lifespan of a road. When is the last time roads were fixed in Pontiac? If we do this millage, how long is it going to take to, like, all of that information hadn't been done. Now, the strategic decision for not doing all of that information was it takes a long time to put that information together. And the decision was, hey, if it goes on the ballot, if we're going to put it on the ballot, we'll get all that information, we'll do a campaign, but we didn't want to spend the time getting all of that information together to essentially say, yeah, that's nice, we don't even want to vote on it. So what did I learn? What I learned from that situation is sometimes you have to invest in the sunk cost, right? So sometimes you have to put forward all of the work, even though it's costly, just to potentially get to no.
Thank you.
Yes.
This has been enjoyable learning about you and hearing your thoughts. And sadly, I have the last prepared question for you tonight. So it has to do with how do you balance the need for long-term strategic planning with the day-to-day operational needs of the city?
Oh, I love that question. So you've heard me say several times, 100 years, are we going to be here 100 years from now? 100 years is a random number because it just, represents longevity in common parlance. But I will say that you balance that in the sense of you always have to keep the future in mind in every decision that you make. It's really hard to do, but if you don't begin with the end in mind, in everything you do, you will end up wasting resources. And so the way I try to balance it is anytime there's a decision that is a today decision, right? This is a throwaway decision. We make, hundreds of throwaway decisions every day. Am I going to eat here? Am I going to eat there? Do I take this route to work or do I take that route to work? So when I'm faced with a throwaway decision in city management, don't always succeed, but I try to stop and say, hey, does this throwaway decision have unintended consequences out into the future? So going back to the situation that I talked about earlier with the individuals who all wanted to move into the same space, it was essentially a throwaway decision, like who goes into the space, that department, this department, that department. But any of those departments that I picked was going to have a ripple effect down the line, because if I move you from here, now I need to figure out, because we have limited space in City Hall, so it's a jigsaw puzzle. So I need to move someone into there, and by making all of these moves, am I ultimately breaking up departments and creating, like, you're very happy because you got into the new space and your productivity is going to go up because you're happy, but am I now breaking productivity chains because other people are no longer in situations where they're together and being most productive? And so thinking about, even though these decisions seem like, oh, well, it should be simple, it's just make this decision, always keeping an eye to the end goal of what are we ultimately trying to do? And that's how I try to balance it.
Nice. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Kalfani, for your time with the council this evening. We do have a little bit of time left, but I would ask you to prioritize questions that you have, since you won't have that much time to ask City Council. But do you have any questions for City Council at this time?
I do. So my first question, and probably my biggest question, and I would love to hear from as many of you who are willing to answer the question, is, so as City Council, you are not just fiduciaries of the city, you are actually representatives of the public. You are the public, you are residents. So from your vantage point, what is it that the residents of Berkley need in a manager?
I'll begin. I would say that the residents of the city of Berkley are looking for a city manager with a strong financial background, a solid communicator. So not only would this person be able to listen, to receive information, but to also communicate information out well? I think that, for me personally, I think the city manager needs to be able to say no and be firm in that no sometimes. I would like a strategic thinker, someone who can take our strategic plan, look at our master plans, look at the things that residents and stakeholders have given input on, and use it as a guide to move the city forward. So if we've all invested in these documents and in these processes, and we've all put in our input about what's important, I would like the new city manager, whoever that person is, to be able to absorb that, look at it, and help us to move the city forward in the way that we've all communicated that we see it going. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would just add, I think Mayor Dean summed it up very nicely, so that you have time to move on to other questions. As part of this process, there were opportunities for residents to fill out questionnaires about qualities that they were seeking out in a city manager. We had that same opportunity, and there was really good alignment between the results from all of the parties. So I do think, while there may be nuances between, individual answers from the community as a whole, there really was alignment to what Mayor Dean was speaking to right now from both council, staff, and our residents.
Okay, great, thank you. Anyone else? All right.
Lots to say, but in interest of time, I'd
Yes.
love to hear additional questions. Yeah.
All right. So then the next question, similar lines so won't be any questions about, what's the time, what's the pay, all of that will come at the end of the process, and there's a range. And anyway, my next question is, what do I not know about Berkley? And what I mean by that is, everyone has the issue that is bubbling under the surface, and you have to be part of the in circle to know that issue. So what is the issue? What is the big issue that needs to be addressed?
Councilmember Hennon.
I think you hit on it earlier, the deferred maintenance over the full lifetime of the city and the need to catch up on that, and the difficulty with that with the state's taxing structure and the revenue sources and our restrictions on their use. So just all of those sorts of, the things lurking under the surface that, people don't see, don't realize, but that are, on our radar, but we need to continue to address with long-term planning and, find solutions.
Okay.
To piggyback on that, did you want to go?
Go ahead, you go first.
I'm advocating for a different budgeting format, something ClearGov that will give us projections on capital improvements, capital equipment purchasing, along with that, a facilities inventory, so that we take stock of all of our buildings, the conditions of those buildings, and then with the information from ClearGov, my goal is that we're able to move forward in a strategic way to take care of our spaces. I've said this before, that, welcome to Berkley. And if you were having company to your home, would you be proud of our city? And there are so many things about Berkley that I am very proud of, and I'll go toe to toe with any other municipality on some things. And there are other things that I'm not so proud of. But there are things that can be worked on. They're not written in stone, and they're not things that can't be changed. So.
Yeah, I think Mayor Dean and Councilmember Hennon hit on it very well. The other thing that I would add is just a fundamental understanding that we've got great residents of all stripes in Berkley, right? I mean, we've got folks who have been here for years and years and years. We've got folks and young families who are newer to the community. And I think that understanding the needs of each of those residents and trying to make sure that we cater to those needs and make everyone feel that they have a place here in Berkley is something that would be pretty fundamental in the next city manager.
I'll just add to that, to Mayor Pro Tem. Our residents are passionate, but our residents also sit and help each other. Like, we can disagree, we can agree, we can maybe have no understanding of each other or every understanding, but we're passionate about each other. When you see the snowfall, we like race out who's gonna shovel our sidewalks first. It's literally that type of community. We want the nicest things, but we at our core, it's our residents that make our city because of their passion for each other and for humanity. It's pretty special here.
And the last thing I'll say is just that it's trust. I think that's the biggest thing is and we've talked about it in these meetings and outside, is we have to get back to trust. And trust is what happens when you have communication, consistency, and transparency. And those are the things that our next city manager has to provide.
Well, I thank you all.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to give you actually an opportunity to give a brief 30-second, other than thank you all, if that you would like to leave them with before you're excused.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that I really appreciate those answers. What I took away from that is we have to work on being intentional about diversity, equity, inclusion, making sure that we are setting the table for everyone, regardless of whatever their background is, whatever their demographic is, age demographic, or any other demographic. We have to make sure that everyone is educated, right? So we have to get the word out and take the time to do the work to make sure that people know what is at stake and what is in front of them, and not in a scary way, not in a, hey, the sky is falling and you have to do this, but just in a plain matter of fact, A or B. And as we do that, we need to make sure that we rebuild everyone's trust. I think that if you look at my history, you will find that that is what I have made a career of doing. Without even hearing those questions, I gave you the anecdote of seeing the people in the hall and just wanting to help them, because that is what I do. When we were, James can attest to this, he had to pry me away from the meet and greet because people still had questions, and I just wanted to answer their questions, not because I was interviewing for a job, but because they had questions and I wanted to answer the questions, because that's what I do. Again, I'm a professor at University of Michigan Flint, so education, communication, talking, and trying to find solutions, that's my brand promise, and hopefully it fits what the city of Berkeley is looking for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, for City Council, Kafani, I'll walk you out in a moment. You have about a 3-minute break before I bring in the next candidate, so
Thank you.
relax.
Yeah.
It's that cord.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
Yep.
The whole time, yep.
I keep looking, and I'm like,
Thank you. Yeah, just,
he didn't trip.
yep. Pull it out, thank you.
Pass that test. I feel like I should run to the restroom just because it's,
Do it, I would, yeah.
It's like mother telling you, I told you to go before we
hello,
left.
that exact feeling.
3 minutes, man? Okay, she's going in.
Yeah, whatever's next in the packet.
No, I'm good,
Right.
thanks.
Yep.
Not yet.
Under there.
I
She
know.
wasn't hiding under the table yet, so, yeah.
If you're not gonna eat it, maybe you can pass it.
You wanna?
Everyone take a bite.
You can start at different ends of the sandwich. Thought about making some popcorn and bringing it, but then I thought that could be a little over the top. Too cliche.
Probably a little bit.
I
Sounds
do
good though.
like popcorn.
I do too.
It's like a healthy snack.
Couldn't be.
I don't put butter on mine.
No. Oh.
Oh,
Oh.
Then.
I go for the extra super movie theater popcorn.
They don't
deluxe
like
yeah.
movie
butter.
theater
That's right.
popcorn. It's always burnt tasting.
Well, that's different than whether it has butter or not, but,
Yeah.
Or greasy
Likes them
burnt
all
or
yellow.
not greasy
All
burnt.
yellow.
oh, nice, yeah, just that nice little snap to them.
I like skinny pop.
I'll make me a big
Myself.
batch
Skinny
when I
pop's
watch
good, too.
when I watch the tapes again,
It's called for a referendum. What version of the popcorn is best?
Like air
Well,
popped or like one of those whirly gigs.
We would think about from our equity and inclusion perspective, diversity, that, all kinds of popcorn are great depending on one's particular
This
taste
seems like a
buds
pretty benign
and
issue.
interests. And so there's room in this world for all popcorn, caramel, cheddar, butter, nasty, no butter, everything.
It has coconut oil and a tiny bit of sugar.
What
It's like a
does?
baby kettle corn
What? What is it?
popcorn.
Oh.
The song.
I have one of those like stovetop, whirly
Oh,
giggy type
you're-
things.
yeah, like
you
a
make
cauldron.
it.
Those
See,
ones,
Dennis
those
is
ones are
shaking his
fun.
head.
Those are fun.
You put a little coconut oil in there with the kernels and just a little bit of
Coconut
sugar.
oil.
Yeah, and then we cover it in butter.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
2 sticks of,
Coconut. No.
Listen, I thought it'd be gross too. It's
No.
delicious.
Imagine has that olive pop, and I won't even touch it.
We haven't tried
I'm
the
gonna
sugar.
bring my popcorn in,
Oh
Toss
boy.
Parmesan cheese on it. every now
and
then, too.
you will
the way to go.
literally be
pizza
eating
sauce,
your
yeah.
words.
I
Oh,
will
man.
literally be.
I don't mess around
Well,
with food.
she says that, Clarence, but I'm gonna tell you.
You like pizza
Councilmember
sauce in your
Ronnie
popcorn?
has
Yeah?
promised me
No.
pasta.
Yeah.
Good thing I didn't hold my breath for
Gluten-free.
it. Just throwing that out there. Not that I'm carrying a grudge or hanging on to a memory or anything.
Is this like this is a habit thing of you promising people pasta? that you don't- What pasta did she promise you?
A gluten-free pasta. We were talking about like She-Wolf makes incredible gluten-free pasta.
You want lasagna?
That's true.
And yeah, different. Yeah, I don't think
do
we
want
can
it.
eat on the same night then, unless the lasagna is gluten-free. But at that point, why bother? I mean, you want the real thing at the end of the day. So
I don't know. I have the gluten-free flour. I haven't used it yet. So I feel like if it's as good as they say, it should be.
Couple more years.
yeah,
I know.
I mean, it'll
I
get
think it would
mealy.
be better in the lasagna because the other lasagna stuff hides the fact that you're eating gluten-free.
Yeah, there is that.
Like cheese and veggies and sauce and all that hide that you're eating sad little gluten-free noodles.
Right. They are sad.
No offense to anybody who's gluten-free.
No,
just,
no,
you know,
none taken. None taken.
You have my thoughts and prayers.
Thank you. Every night.
File a union grievance. Sorry. Thank you, Crystal, for being here this evening. We have, as I mentioned to you, several prepared questions, and we'll get to those in a moment. I'd like if they would, the mayor and city council members to very briefly just introduce themselves to you. Obviously, they have nameplates, and I'm sure you've studied the city council members as you're preparing for this, but it's nice to hear their voice before they're asking you a question. So, Mayor, if you don't mind starting, and we'll go around the table.
I don't mind. Mayor Bridget Dean, happy to have you join us tonight.
Hi, Steve Baker on council here, and we're pleased to meet you.
Hi, Dennis Hennon. Thanks for being here. Could we offer her a water? Oh, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Clarence Black. I've been on council for 11 months.
Greg Patterson, welcome.
Jess Villani, excited to hear from you.
Hi, Ross Gavin. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right, I have your first question. We've asked you to prepare a 3 to 5 minute presentation or introduction of yourself. and the reasons you believe you'll be successful as Berkeley's next city managers. The floor is yours, Crystal.
Okay, thank you for having me. First, I just want to say that I appreciate being here. I'm flattered and honored to have been chosen to make it this far, so thank you. First, I just want to say that Berkeley has long been a city that I've been drawn to even before I lived here. I found myself coming here to shop, eat, attend events for a long time now. As a local government nerd, it's been a place that's intrigued and impressed me also for a long time. Your walkability, tight-knit neighborhoods, great services, just a very strong community feel, a place that I feel like people are very proud to be from and to live in. Working in a neighboring community for nearly a decade has given me a unique perspective. Oak Park and Berkeley share several corridors, and I think we encounter some of the same obstacles and challenges. I've been a passive observer of the decisions and the projects that have come out of Berkeley for over the years. Many of them are very impressive. I've also witnessed some of the conflicts and obstacles, and I find myself kind of theorizing on how I could have done it or how it could have been done differently. Disclaimer, I realize Monday night quarterback is an easy place to coach from, so no, so please note that. I spent the last 9.5 years just across 11 Mile working in Oak Park on the executive team. I've been incredibly lucky to work in an organization that has emphasized innovation, growth, and creativity, and I would love to bring that energy here to Berkeley. I've been given many opportunities through my tenure in Oak Park to expand my skill sets. I work for a city manager that has involved me in a majority of the executive decisions since early in my tenure. I've been an active leader in the budget process for over a decade, or for nearly a decade. I believe my city manager values my passion, pragmatism, and drive for creative problem solving. I've been at the table participating in the brainstorming sessions for most of the finance decisions made in Oak Park over the past 10 years. I've also been given the opportunity to participate and play a role in some amazing and innovative projects over the years. Some that I think have and will continue to transform the built environment in Oak Park. Others that are a little less visible, but I think have made huge impacts on the organization and ultimately to the community. I'm excited for the opportunity to take the baton as Berkeley's next city manager and help the team to continue the momentum that I already see as very tangible here. I'm excited to learn about what each department is working on, to gain a better understanding of what the community needs, to hear the ideas that staff and council have to meet those needs, and to see where my initial ideas fit into all of that. Berkeley is already a wonderful place to live, work, and play. I know that there have been a few bumps in the road, but nothing that I've seen that is not able to overcome. From what I've seen today, Berkeley is just full of people who are passionate about the place that they live and work. I'd be honored to lead the ship in picking up the revision of the strategic plan and help pave the path that allows us to all row in the same direction, to meet the goals that you set and continue to ensure that Berkeley is known for its incredible services, strong community feel, and unmatched quality of life factors. I will say that most of the things that I have talked about already today and will probably continue to talk about, my successes and accomplishments, barely any of them have been done alone. They've been done working with an incredible group of people over in Oak Park, for the most part. Organizations are only as strong as the teams that we create and foster. While I am confident in my capabilities and my knowledge base, and I know that I have a lot to bring to the table, I think that my biggest value to Berkeley is creating and fostering a team of excellence. While again, I have not accomplished this alone, I can say that with confidence, I've played an integral role in helping build and foster a team of excellence in Oak Park, and that's what I have to offer you.
Thank you.
Okay, based on your research and understanding of the city, what do you believe are the most important opportunities and challenges for the city in the near term, and how would you approach these?
Okay, I'll start with challenges. Like any city, I think infrastructure is an issue. I wish we all had a magic wand that we could wave and figure that one out, but we're all dealing with some long-term maintenance issues. And so that, I don't think that's unique to Berkeley. I think that's mostly in Metro Detroit area especially. I think in addition to that, I know there are some challenges around the lead service lines here and being able to fund that. And then I also think there are some challenges in building trust with the community and just making sure or gaining an understanding of what the community as a whole really wants and the direction that they would like to see Berkeley move in the future. I also think there's an opportunity there, an opportunity to really to gain the trust of the community members and to revision what the city of, maybe it's not a revision, but just making sure that everyone's on the same page and we understand what the majority of the community members would like to see. I'd like to think there's an opportunity in finding funding, unique funding mechanisms. I think that it will have to be done with the assistance of our state and federal government officials, so hopefully they're listening. But I'm prepared and excited to tackle all of those things. I also think that there is a unique opportunity here. You guys have done a great job with having a walkable community. They're wonderful public spaces. I think, and I see Mike back there, he's done a great job as well. And I think there's only more opportunity to have places, to build places for people to really congregate and have those serendipitous conversations and meet and talk. And it's a strong community here, and I think we should really emphasize and capitalize on that.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for being here and for your time tonight. My opportunity to ask you the question includes, how would you describe your management and leadership style? Please identify both strengths and weaknesses related to your management and leadership approach.
Okay, so I would say I have a genuine passion for leading teams to work collaboratively and without silos. I think that's really important, in alignment with organizational goals. My goals as a leader are to empower the people that work within the organization, ensuring that everyone has the support and the resources that I can realistically provide to do their jobs efficiently. I also respect everyone's area of expertise. I don't think I'll ever be the smartest person. I think my role is leading all of the smart people that we have working for us all in the same direction and really capitalizing on what their strengths are. Fostering trust, I think, is number one. Trust within a team. You don't have an efficient, successful team without that. I think the other side of trust is accountability, and that means holding yourself accountable as well as everyone else around you. I think accountability comes with a delicate balance. Grace should always be involved. None of us are perfect. We make mistakes. But it is about trusting that the people on your team can do what you need them to do, and that they trust you to provide them the support that they need, and that they trust that you respect them, that there's a respect factor there. Weaknesses as far as leadership goes, I guess I would have to say, while I value accountability, I find it hard sometimes. I want to continue to give chances. And I think there is something to that. I think if you're really focused on coaching the people underneath you to be the best that they can be, you have to provide room for growth. Actually, in Oak Park, along with our HR director, we just started an organizational development and employee engagement, it's a mouthful, program, and it's around Clifton strengths. So it's around strengths and finding the strengths in in the people of your organization. And there's also a program that aligns with it. It's called Managers as Coaches. So we're actually working with our managers to be able to coach their employees. And there has to be a lot of grace in that. That does not mean that you don't pay attention to people's weaknesses. Doesn't mean that you are not aware of when someone is underperforming and that you don't take care of it, but it does mean, I think, that you really focus on how you can help them grow.
Thank you.
So, what do you consider essential in the relationship between a city manager and the city council, and how you facilitate a productive relationship with city council?
So, communication would probably be number one. And I'd also go back to the last question, and trust. And I think those two things go hand in hand. So I think you first and foremost have to trust that the person that you have sitting in that seat is somebody that you trust to carry out your goals every day. So I think in my opinion, there's a strategic plan behind that. So do we all have an understanding of the expectations every day? What are those? And that also is a constant communication circle. So I would want to know what your guys' preferable communication mechanisms are. So how frequently are we talking, so that I know that I'm staying on track for what your expectations are. And I think that just is a continuing the trust circle, right? And that's how it breaks down also, is if the communication stops and we have different ideas of what the expectations are.
Crystal, this next prepared question is a little bit longer, so if you need me to repeat any part of it,
Okay.
just let me know. As city manager, you will face requests from various stakeholders, residents, city council members, or community groups who may want things that are not feasible or are inconsistent with the city's agreed upon strategic goals. Can you provide an example of a time when you had to say no to such a request? How did you approach the situation, and how did you ensure the individual or group still felt heard and respected?
Okay, that is a long one. When I've had to say no. Right now, we are in the midst of planning a community center. So we passed a millage in November. The community passed a millage in November in Oak Park to bond out a $44 million community center. So that came from a very long public engagement process that started with the update of our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And for about a year, we engaged public on what they wanted in general for the recreation amenities over the next 10 years in Oak Park. And we heard a resounding, we would like a community center, and these are the things that we want in it. And I would argue we did a very good job at digging into the aspects that they wanted in the community center as well. And so now we're in the stages of, there will be more engagement, and we'll pinpoint a little bit more what people are looking for. But we have a pretty good understanding of what will be included in it. And we've already heard some people from the public want some very specific things that did not come out of the community engagement. And we feel strongly that we did a great job. There was a statistically valid survey involved. And like I said, lots of different ways that we went out to the community to hear what they wanted. And there are a few things that we're hearing from some community members that they feel strongly about should be included, and it's not what we heard from the rest of the community. And so while we haven't said no yet, I know that that's coming, and I know that there are going to be some people who are disappointed that there may not be some aspects included. But like anything else, I think you have to sit back on the fact that we did the best that we could to reach out to the community and understand what they wanted as a whole. That does not mean every single person in the community is going to agree with what those things are, and that's, I know you guys are familiar with that as well. And so I think it's just about being able to justify your response, no matter what the no is. It's being able to explain to people and taking the time to help them understand why it's a no. They may not agree with you even when they leave, but as long as you've taken the time to explain the why behind the no, especially when you can point it to, this is what your community wants. This is what the majority of your community members want, even if it's not what you want. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you.
It was a long one.
Mine's shorter. How do you hold direct reports accountable for projects and responsibilities that you've delegated to them?
So I guess I touched on this a little bit. Accountability is incredibly important. I think the first step is understanding why. So there are a lot of reasons why someone might not have accomplished something, especially in the way that you thought it needed to be accomplished. So maybe there was a miscommunication in the expectation. Maybe they did not have the support that they needed and they didn't let you know. Maybe they're just in a bad way right now and they've had a bad week and they couldn't hit a deadline. So I think first is really digging into what happened, how did we get there? And then the next step is, okay, well, let's try to correct this for next time. How can we keep this from happening next time? None of that, I think, precludes holding people accountable when there is a trend for things that aren't going right. I still think that there are a lot of conversations that need to happen there. But I think the more that you hold people what you can't do is not hold them accountable. What you can't do is sweep it under the rug and just assume that it's going to be okay or it's going to change. I think it's important that people, when they're not meeting their end of the agreement, that they understand how it affects the rest of the organization as well. So you didn't do X, Y, or Z, and that meant our teammate over here couldn't do X, Y, or Z, and now it's affecting them. And so I think holding them accountable is helping them see the larger picture also of what their missteps have done, and then working towards fixing it and taking the possibly the action steps in the future that need to be done if that doesn't change.
All right, so we're going to switch topics here and talk about budgets. So while recognizing that fiscal policy is set by the City Council, please describe your approach to being a steward of public financial resources. Please provide specific examples from your past experiences that demonstrate your ability to implement fiscal policy and proactively manage a public budget.
Okay, so like I said earlier, I've been lucky enough to be, well, I guess it depends on your perception, but lucky enough to be a part of the budget process in Oak Park over the last 10 years. Maybe I shouldn't say this in a public meeting, but we tend to call them we'll call them situation room meetings during that time. There's never enough money to do all the things that need to be done, right? So it's every year we come around to, here's our capacity, here's what we can do, here are our priorities, that's very important. Here's our larger strategy, and are there things that need, unfortunately, this is a question sometimes, are there triage needs? Because sometimes, as you know, things pop up that you did not expect, like, I don't know, lead lines, for instance, that have to be, but you have to include those in the budget. So part of it, I think, is strategizing as it pertains to your strategic plan. I think that's really important. And then looking long term and strategizing where you can leverage outside funding. We've had some success over in Oak Park. I tend to lead the efforts in finding grant and outside funding mechanisms for our projects over there. And sometimes different funding streams come through where you may want to move a project up or down because of the funding that you can leverage with it. I'd also say we have passed, in my tenure with Oak Park, I'm proud to say that we've gone through 4 millage campaigns, and 7 of those, each of the campaigns had several different millages included in it. 7 of those millages were they were renewals. And so each time we had to say, do we want to renew at its current rate because of the rollbacks, or do we want to fill it back up? And in Oak Park, we have many community members that are on a fixed income. So anytime we're trying to make the decision of, here are the services that they need and that they're asking for, the things that they want, and there is a very real possibility that there are people who cannot afford those things. So it's always a decision and a conversation that you need to understand all the factors included. And so we're usually doing some analyses on what services we can still provide. Do we need to re-up? Do we need to re-up it? Or are we going to lose some services because of it? Luckily, we've been in the position each time that a renewal has been okay, up until this last time with the community center, and then we also passed a millage. The community also passed a millage for operating. But all that is to say, I've been very intimately involved in the strategy behind all of those things and all of the considerations I think that you have to make when you're making those decisions.
Thank you.
Great. So if selected as the city manager, can you tell us how you would approach building trust and respect of the elected officials, of the staff, and of the community? And can you address each of those individually for me?
Yeah, so I'll start with staff. I think building trust with staff is first, especially as a new city manager, just coming in and getting to know people and not making sure that you have a full understanding of the context and how things are done before you are bringing any changes or suggestions along. It's very important, I think, I know it's very important to establish respect and trust. Respect, and that breeds trust. And then constant communication with your staff members. So if I'm the one in charge of leading council's priorities, and I'm not constantly speaking back to the staff, and then I have to hold them accountable at some point, and they said, well, we had no idea, you didn't communicate those things. I think it's a constant stream of communication. That way, no one is surprised ever. So if expectations aren't being met, and things like that, I'm always giving, I can always be assured that I've communicated what I needed to communicate, and that they can trust that I'm going to be there to support them as well. With council, I'd say it's also communication. I'm going to go back to the strategic plan. I think a strategic plan is a vital element to a good relationship. I think it's a vital element to local government in general. I also think, though, specifically to a relationship between a city manager and council, especially as you guys are getting a lot of opinions from the public that may change on a dime, right? I think everybody moving in the same direction and making sure that we're all kind of working towards the same thing is very important, and that helps guide that process. So if I have a strategic plan to go by, I know on a daily basis, here's what I'm working towards, and I know that those are the goals that you guys have all set. And then when we need to pivot away from those, it's a conversation, but we have that to establish it. And then constant communication. Same with staff. I think once communication breaks down between anybody, trust tends to break down. And maybe not even on purpose. So sometimes you have to be very intentional about the communication stream. So I would say reports to you on a regular basis. What's going on? You guys all have your own thing going on during the day, be it a job or whatever you have going on. So you're relying on me to make sure that you understand what's going on here every day. And so when you get questions, you know how to answer them. So I think that is part of what helps breed trust with council. And then the public. I'm going to go back to communication. We've, over in Oak Park, we're heavy on public engagement. And I will say I tend to lead the public engagement strategies that we've had over the years. We have found some really unique ways to speak to our residents and to get their attention on things. And sometimes you have to be very intentional about that. So people may not be paying attention until they're upset. So it's I would argue it's part of our job to help get their attention before that and help inform them and help them to understand why decisions are made. They may not agree with them, but if you can help explain to them why we're doing what we're doing, I think that's the best chance you have at building trust.
I do a quick follow-up to that. So, first of all, I'd be very interested to hear about the unique ways to speak to the public. But a side question as sort of a follow-up to this, and certainly understand that this is not a local government-specific issue, so don't feel like you need to have the need to solve it all. But how would you try to address misinformation provided by stakeholders, either at public meetings, on social media, and sort of the personal attributes for you on what it takes to handle that type of interaction?
Mm-hmm. Thick skin. I think there's not a one-size-fits-all to that. There are often, especially with social media now, I don't have to tell you guys, but with social media now, anyone can say anything, and it's out there for the public, and whoever follows it, follows it. I think you have to pick and choose to an extent, because if you were going to respond to everything, that's all our communication channels would be doing. That said, I think, and I am a community member here, so I know some of the things that have happened. There are some times when things are starting to, let's say, get off the rails that you should get in front of. I know in Oak Park, our communications team actively kind of just patrols what's happening in the community groups, and once we see whether it's misinformation or just areas where people tend to we can tell that there are questions. They may not have come directly to us. We try to build communication plans around that. So, okay, people are really kind of wondering, for whatever reason, they're really questioning, well, actually, I shouldn't even say for whatever reason. They got their tax bill, and they're really wondering at this point what happened. Usually we would get in front of that, so I guess it's not reactionary, but paying attention to where people need more information. But sorry to bring you back to your question. I do think you have to pay attention to it, but you have to pick and choose, because if you're back and forth constantly, that's all you're doing. And that's all you're doing. But helping to spread the correct information is helpful to the public. Once something starts to get out of control and people are really misunderstanding something, it does no one good if the community believes one thing when that thing is not true. So I do think there are times you really just have to, sometimes it's just a gut check and a conversation amongst yourselves and staff on when things are possibly getting out of hand, that you need a communication plan around it.
Thank you very much.
How do you ensure that the needs and concerns of the community are incorporated into the city decision-making processes?
Okay. A strategic plan. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I think if everything comes from a good amount of public engagement as well. So again, I'll say in Oak Park, we had a pretty robust strategic plan process that I facilitated. And it started with engagement with the public. So we asked them, we had a set of things that we asked them that drove, or at least helped drive councils setting their goals. So they had they felt good about knowing what the pulse of the community was at the time when they set their goals. And so I think at the end of the day, if you can always go back to, we went out, we talked to you, we really tried to get you to participate. If you didn't, I'm really sorry. And now we put these goals in place based on that. And now we put objectives and action items that all reach these goals. If you can always go back to that, it's hard to argue that, right? It's hard to say you're not doing what was in the best interest of the community or what the community wanted when you did everything that you could, arguably, to make sure that you understood what they wanted, and then you set goals, and now we're following the action plan to achieve those goals. And you look back at the action plan at the strategic plan, I would say best practices annually. So if things are changing and you do need to make some changes, it's not outdated necessarily. But I think that's the key is being able to go back to a plan that's set, that everyone knows about. Shouldn't say everybody, but it's out there for the public, and the process was credible and justifiable.
I have a brief follow-up to that. You did touch upon this, but I'd just like a little more detail. Please describe a situation you've handled where the community faced a contentious issue with strong, diverging opinions, and what did you learn from this experience?
I don't have a lack of a response. I'm just trying to pick the best one. I'm gonna go most recently with our with the millages that we put on the ballot, because I do think it's kind of a sensitive topic. Like I said, we have a good portion of our population in Oak Park is on a fixed income, and so we had some pushback when we put those millages on the ballot, because people thought, they said, you're asking, as if we were promoting for it to happen, you're asking for people to raise their taxes exponentially. And my response to that was, we are not, we're giving you the option. So our argument there was, and I fully believe in this, we went through a plan, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. They very loudly told us what they wanted. It was very clear they wanted a new community center, for instance, and updates to the parks. And at that point, arguably, we are obligated to go back to the table and go, okay, how do we make this happen? How do we give the community members what they want? And so this was how we came up with a plan. We even had some, well, just to dig into that a little bit, one of the millages was for a bond, $44 million for a community center. but you need money to operate a community center, money that we don't currently have. And so we also put a Headley override onto the ballot. So we had some room in our original operating and what the rollbacks had created. It was about 2.4 mils. And through some analyses, we found that that 2.4 mils would help us do a couple things. If the community center bond was passed, it would help us fill the gap in funding that we needed to operate a larger community center. And it would also give us money to make some updates to the parks that had been identified in the master plan. Also, we tried to explain, and this was a difficult one, if you do not want the community center, but you still want updates to your parks, you could just vote for this Headley override, and it would give the city the funds to make improvements to the parks over the years, and also increase some of our programming within the space limitations that we have. But here's the kicker: if you vote for the community center and you don't vote for the operating millage, there is no money to operate. So that was a difficult one to talk to people about. But also we received quite a bit of pushback from people who were just angry that it was on the ballot, and so I had many conversations just explaining to people what our obligations are. We asked, you answered, and we said, here's what we can do. We're not saying whether or not you should pass this. We're saying if you want these things, here's what you should do. And so we can operate, I mean, we'll do our jobs either way, but we are obligated to show you what it takes to get to what you asked, what you wanted. So there was quite a bit of pushback just on us putting those on the ballot. And to be honest, council went back and forth on whether they would or not for those reasons, and ultimately it was decided.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hello again. Thank you for your time this evening, and it's my sad responsibility to have the last of the prepared questions for you here. And this might give you an opportunity to elaborate further on one of the themes that you've mentioned throughout our conversation thus far. How do you balance the need for long-term strategic planning with the day-to-day operational needs of the city? You've touched on that in a few different ways, so let's crack that open just a little bit more.
Yeah. I have found, at least in my work in Oak Park, that most of the day-to-day activities that we do align with the strategic plan in some way. Where the roads diverge is when things come up from the community they want you to react on things immediately. And if that reaction requires money, that's when there has to be a discussion involved. But I think that most of the day-to-day, and if we are starting to move away from the strategic plan, I think that's where it provides those kind of bumpers. So, okay, we need to reassess how we're doing things, or why we're doing this day-to-day, why we're doing the things the way that we're doing if they're not aligning with our strategic plan, because everything really should. And so I think it's kind of the red flag that goes up. If the things that you're doing start to not be aligned with that, you need to rethink what you're doing. And also, I think you utilize it to put things into perspective and prioritize what needs to be done and how time needs to be spent and how money needs to be spent.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we do have a few more minutes. Crystal, as I mentioned when we walked into the room together, you'll have an opportunity to ask a couple questions of City Council, but there will just be time for one or two, so make sure you please prioritize. But
Okay.
if you have any questions for City Council, please ask now.
Yeah, I should prioritize. So, if each of you could tell me what your number one quality in this role in the city, in your next city manager is. So if you had to pick, I know, if you just had to pick one thing that's the most important to you, what would it be?
In the community manager role.
Yes, yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll start. I think, and I'm sorry if I jump out ahead, but I think for me anyway, it's going to be communication. Like, it's going to be that honest, forthright communication with not only us as council members and providing the information that we need to be able to make decisions, but certainly providing a full host of information to the residents that's digestible, that makes sense to folks, and that they are getting the full story as well. So for me, I think that's probably the main attribute that I'm looking for.
Okay, thank you.
I concur with Mayor Pro Tem Gavin. Well said.
Oh,
No, it's okay. We can just.
okay.
We can go around.
Yeah. I'd like the distinction between a steady hand and a firm hand, right? I think one of the attributes that I would love to see in this is that steady hand, right? Keep an eye on all gauges and dials of the dashboard of our community's health, the various departments, the various needs and things like you mentioned in your prior response about just seeing where things are starting to establish a trend or a pattern, that kind of stuff. I think a steady hand that doesn't get too rattled or like, oh, let's, like 5-year-olds playing soccer, just chasing the ball around the field, right? It's like, no, we got this thing, here's the plan, that kind of stuff, as opposed to a firm hand, which is like, no, kind of a deal. It's okay to say no, and I appreciated your response about having the why for the no and working through it together to say, this is the best decision. So I'd go with a steady hand.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Communication is my number one. I'll give my number two. So, and it's the long-term strategic thinking that we are acting proactively instead of reactively and planning for the future.
Okay, great.
You have to lead. I think just to keep it simple, you have to go with your gut and inspire people to follow. So, whether or not they follow, you still have to lead. And if you do that, then I think you'll be successful. Everything else will work itself out, but you have to lead.
Not really fair that I am almost to the last, but a lot of them stole my answers. So my additional one is trust. Like, trust your gut, trust the intentions of our community, trust the intentions of us, staff, our residents, our business owners, everything that makes up our community, but trust in yourself. You've made it to this round, so just trust, lead, communicate, and with a firm but steady hand. So I'm using all of them because I'm coming to the end, but trust, I think, is the one word that comes to mind.
So building off of what Councilmember Hennon said, I believe the top priority is strategic planning. We have a rich, wonderful history of 100 years of this city, but we're at a crossroads where we need to start, and we probably already, quite frankly, should have been planning for the needs of the future. So we need someone who can come in, look at that big picture, help organize all of the different pieces. We're also in a place where there's been a lot of turnover in some of the leadership of the city. So someone who can plan really well about the skills and talents that are needed to fill those roles so that it aligns with that vision and that we're all working in tandem to build the next 100 years of the city, or the foundation of the next 100.
Great.
All right, time for one more.
Okay. What is, okay, expectations for communication? So consistency, I know communication was obviously a strong one for several of you, as it should be. What is the expectation for communication? Is it daily text messages? Is it phone calls? It might differ for all of you, but if you have a response to that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, thanks. So I think about proactive and reactive kind of stuff, obviously. Regular communication at a dependable pace, whether it's weekly, like a Friday summary kind of deal, or a Monday, here's what happened last week, here's what we're looking to do this week, that kind of thing I think would be good at our level, so that we are basically in tune with what's happening and before something gets too far. An appropriate cadence and interaction with, I'll speak about the residents, right? Having ways to communicate with them. We have the newsletters and social media and things like that. So, continue that kind of cadence. So I guess I'm talking about frequency and cadence and things like that. And then on the reactive or emergent stuff, you have the text message. Sometimes you just got to say, hey, there's, this thing happened and we need to react to it. So whether it's text or you call us or whatever the appropriate medium is, that kind of thing. So it's knowing what can wait and knowing when to jump out in front of something, I think, is going to be key. And that's back to just kind of knowing the nature of the situation and, can this wait for the Friday reports? Is this something that, I need their feedback on so we can do this decision by Thursday, that kind of stuff. And then also, again, on the resident side, providing that consistent, message and extension of opportunities to provide input and feedback, right, to say this isn't a one-way broadcast. This is an opportunity to have a dialogue. So that kind of stuff I think would be really helpful.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yeah, building off of that, everything he said, plus, there's the weekly report that I like the idea of. There is the urgent text message that something's going down right now. In between, there is something popped up. It's not super urgent, but we should know about it timely. It's an email that we get. And then regular one-on-one or one-to-many, sub-quorum, numbered many meetings, just so, a couple times a month, probably once a month, so that we're, have time for face-to-face dialogue and, catching up on things.
Great.
Can I just one? Wait, are we going around or?
Wait, yeah.
Okay,
But
sorry,
if you-
sorry.
We can go out of order.
No. I didn't know if we were going or if it was. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, please.
No, do
please.
it.
No, please.
Councilmember Patterson.
Oh,
it's you.
okay. Arguing over it now. Communicating well here.
Yeah.
So I also like what they said, but I also like okay, 1 month ago we said we would do X project. Here's the update on that. Because I think with the weekly, with the face-to-face, sometimes we forget that part. Following up and okay, this is where this project is. This is where this is. This was the resolution on X, Y, and Z. So just to add, I do like the weekly reports. I like the interaction, however often it is, with meeting face-to-face or phone or whatever. But that follow-up stuff as well.
Great.
So I have 3 expectations. One for me, one for staff, and then the other for our citizens. So for me, my life is a zoo inside of a circus, inside of a house with a beautiful wife and 4 teenagers, 3 of which are girls and go to Berkley High. So in terms of my time, give me information that is actionable. So when you reach out to me, if it's something, let me know if it's something for awareness or if it's something for action. Do I need to make a decision or is it just something you need me to know? In terms of your staff, communicate in the most effective way that allows you to maintain the culture you want to have, the trust that you need, the transparency. I'm expecting you to communicate in a way that's consistent with who you say you want to be and the team that you want. So I love that a lot of what you said in your responses was team. Love that. As far as our citizens, be upfront. If you don't know, I don't know, but I'll get you an answer. Don't BS them. So those are my 3 expectations for communication in those 3 areas.
Great. Thank you.
Councilmember Valani.
All right. I would say more is more, and not in a micromanaging kind of way, but as we all live in the community, we're out and about, we're constantly, residents will come up to us and say, oh my gosh, what's going on with this? And sometimes we're finding out about stuff from residents, and that's the worst place because then we can't have your back, we can't have the staff's back. So I would say sometimes there's the types of communications where it's FYI, this is going on. It might not be something we have to take action on, but I think constantly just the more information we have, heads up, in real time when it needs to be in real time, not everything does, is better.
Great.
Yeah, very briefly. I mean, it's all been said in a lot of ways. And so the one thing I would want to add to that in communication with the residents is that if there is some sort of city policy or some sort of city action that is going to change the way that a resident interacts with their city, in their mind, in their perception, or objectively as well, then that needs to be communicated with. It doesn't necessarily dictate of a full-on communications plan, But there needs to be an understanding on the front end that this is going to change how they interact with their city.
Finally, I will tell you that interim city manager Geinzer has put together a very robust weekly update that's been mentioned already, but what I want to zero in on is it's every department. So I feel like when I read that, I know what each department's doing, and I think that that's very important. I will also say I meet with the city manager, or in this case interim, on a weekly basis. I like that. We figure out a time that works for both of us. I just feel like there's a lot that has to be covered, and I have the time to do that. I also want to loop in our communications director, Caitlin Flora. I think it's incredibly important that when you or a member of council sees something on the horizon, like this could be something, we don't know, I think she needs to be updated immediately, even if it never happens. I don't want anybody, especially the communications director, to be caught flat-footed. And so I believe that it's the responsibility of the city manager certainly to give her a heads up on that. And if there's anything that council is seeing, hearing, feeling, I think passing that to the city manager to then be communicated to her, I think is important as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
I'll give you a few moments if you'd like to respond to what you heard from them, and then you'll have one more opportunity to kind of close and leave them with your closing thoughts.
Okay, I agree with everything that you guys said. Like I said earlier, I think communication is kind of at the heart of building trust. So once that starts to break down, but everybody sometimes has a different idea of what that looks like, or what you have time for, right? So some people give me the bullet points. Some people want the details. But I think the consistency in communication is very important, and and as the mayor said, for some people who have the time for it, maybe one-on-ones on a weekly basis is what makes the most sense. But I just want to make sure I had my head wrapped around kind of what all of your expectations are, and if you decide to choose me, we would have further conversations on what that looks like. But I just want to get a feel for it. But I agree with all of it. So,
Well, now
especially letting Caitlin know.
Yeah.
She doesn't need any surprises.
Now you have an opportunity to kind of close us out with any last thoughts you'd like to leave City Council with as you end the interview.
Okay. First of all, very well done today. Staff did a fantastic job. Emily gave me my tour, and she did a really great job. We had some great conversations. She gave me a little insight into some things, including some of the building issues. So I just thought that was really well done. Staff, the questions that staff asked me during the roundtable were really insightful, and I think I just get a very good vibe from all of them, for lack of anything else. Berkley has always been a place, or for a very long time has been a place that's intrigued me as a place to work, and I think everything that I've seen today has only enforced that. Nothing has red flagged at all, for me at least. I know there are challenges and obstacles. I'm very aware. I'm a resident, and I utilize Facebook, so I'm very aware of most of the things, at least. And there's actually a little bit of excitement in kind of tackling some of those things. So I also met the other two candidates. I don't think there's a bad decision. So good luck to you in just choosing what fits best.
Thank you very much.
Thank
All right,
you.
we've got a 3-minute break, and I did get a note. Just remember that I think the mics are still on as we're 3-minute breaking. And I'll walk our candidate out and bring the next candidate in a couple minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They didn't like the popcorn talk?
front of them, but it'll be nice to hear their voice before they start asking the question. So if you may, Mayor, kick us
Mayor
off.
Bridget Dean, we've talked about my name earlier today. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you. It's also nice to have my sister's name right in front of me.
Yes.
Good evening. I'm Steve Baker on council. I'm looking forward to getting to know you a little better. Thank you. Thank you.
Dennis Hennon, thank you for coming.
Clarence Black, I've been on council for 11 months. Looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome.
Greg Patterson, welcome.
Jess Villani, excited to hear from you.
Hi, Ross Gavin. Looking forward to hearing from you tonight.
By the way, thank you for not mixing up the order, because that would have been really cruel, because I've watched a lot of these meetings and you're all sitting in the same order. It's also the same order I have typed here, just in case I forgot. Sorry, I'm detail-oriented, so I do that sort of thing.
All right, thank you, John. And this first question that I'll read is intended for you to be able to introduce yourself, and you've received it in advance. We've asked that you prepare a 3 to 5 minute presentation that introduces yourself, or just an answer to this question that introduces yourself and the reasons you believe you will be successful as Berkeley's next city manager. The floor is yours.
Thank you, James. I want to thank all of you for the opportunity today. I had a great time visiting people from the city, touring the facilities, meeting the directors. It was just a great day for me, and I just want to say thank you because I've had this opportunity. So, sitting in front of you is probably the only high school math teacher you've seen today. So if anyone wants to talk about the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, we could do that. I know we have some limited time, but I wanted to start there because I recognize that I have a different background, and you on the council have copies of my resume, I'm sure, but the person behind me and the people watching at home might not. So I am going to kind of walk through a little bit of my background because it is a little bit different. So I started as a high school math teacher and really enjoyed leadership, had an opportunity to become a school principal, then after a handful of years became the assistant superintendent for human resources in the Birmingham Public Schools. Birmingham Public Schools, as you know, because they're kind of a neighbor of yours, large school district, high-performing school district. We had about a budget of $90 million, about 760 employees at the time, and I had responsibility for all the pieces, full employee life cycle, managing a self-funded health, well, they were fully insured plan, my next job was self-funded, but managing benefits plans, doing all the retention, negotiating all the collective bargaining agreements, because you spent a lot of time doing that in the school space. So did all the HR functions inside of a school district. And then I had a great opportunity, an opportunity to go home. I'm from Grosse Pointe, and I was asked to be the deputy superintendent for educational services in Grosse Pointe. Schools are really good at making long titles that don't tell you anything. So let me tell you what that's about. I was the HR guy, but I also had operational responsibility for the day-to-day ops of the school district, so supervising the principals, crisis management, those sorts of pieces. And because I had a real passion, maybe it's my math background, but a passion for finance, while I didn't sit the CFO seat, I did a lot of things in data projection, finance projection, cost projections, because I had HR responsibility in schools where 91% of our costs are people. So like you live in that space talking about those sorts of things. Ended my career in the Grosse Pointe Public Schools as their superintendent and had an opportunity to retire from there this past August, so 13 months ago. That's kind of my official background that way. In addition to that, from an educational perspective, because I'm a teacher at heart and we collect a lot of degrees, I've got a couple master's degrees and I have a doctorate degree in education policy studies from Wayne State University with a cognate, which is like a minor in the School of Business at Wayne State, and my dissertation was in school finance. I'm SHRM SPC, and I also still teach down at Wayne State on the adjunct faculty. I teach school law and a couple of other classes down there every semester. But that is not why I'm here. And transparently, while I don't know any of you, I'm confident none of you are looking to hire me or not hire me based on the stuff I just said. Really, what you're probably trying to figure out is why. Why am I here? And I want to kind of address that piece. I'm here because I'm at this point in my life where I get to make really strategic decisions about what's a good fit and what's not a good fit. And I thought this was a good fit, and after today, I feel like it's even a better fit. And I want to explain why I think the fit is right. The first is I have a deep, lifelong commitment to community and public service. I believe that government, when done right, is a value add, and it's one of the things that makes our society work well and actually our country work great is representative government. And I realize I wouldn't be sitting up there as a representative, but I really like the part of working and partnering inside of government and serving a community. That's what I've been doing for 29 years of my life. I think that part's a match. The second part that's a match for me is you're going to hear me talk a lot about my personal belief structure around valuing humans, and I'm going to use two words that I think match well with what you're looking for, and I'm probably going to use them a couple other times today. I talk a lot and think a lot about transparency and clarity. Clarity is kindness. Being clear to people is one of the kindest things we can do. And I know as the superintendent, I did this, deputy superintendent, I did it, and as a city manager, I know they do it. They spend the majority of their time providing clarity. Clarity to the board, clarity to the council, clarity to the community. Sometimes that's like in an official capacity, maybe inside of this room, maybe it's with the directors group. I quite often was doing clarity in the line at Kroger because people would stop me when I was at Kroger and say, John, tell me about this. Why did the school district do that? And that clarity and that transparency, when done properly, creates trust. And trust is one of the most important things. It's more important than all these buildings or the fire trucks or all the other things that we have. It's the most important thing we have with our community, and I'm committed to building trust through clarity and transparency. And the third piece, the third reason I'm sitting here is, and you might have picked up on it, I'm kind of a happy, excitable person who's deeply committed to growing others. And growing others might be mentoring. I love to mentor. I got a phone call last week from a guy I worked with in Birmingham 15 years ago who wanted to pick my brain. Awesome. But mentoring and growing others can be partnering with seven elected council members and figure out how do we grow as a group, how do we as a learning body and as a governing body grow together. It could be growing with the directors, it could be growing with the city. For those reasons, that's why I'm here. And now, because you haven't stopped me yet, I'm going to give you the other reason I'm kind of here. Flashback to 1992. Some of you might not remember it, but I remember it, 1992. And in 1992, there was this young man. He had very long blonde hair, had a ponytail most of the time. He had 2 earrings. Really thought his lifelong dream was to be Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam. Okay? But he was going to Wayne State, and like most 19-year-old guys, this person was spending not as much time thinking about school, but thinking about, even in biology class, but thinking about other biology, and he sees this cute girl. And he strikes up a conversation. And for possibly the first time in this young man's life, she actually says yes when he asks someone out on a date, and he's so excited. And she's like, would you like to go to the movies? Yes, he says. She says, would you like to go see the movie Hook? And she's like, well, you haven't seen it already yet. And he then lies completely. The previous weekend he'd seen it with his mother. Sounds a little pathetic. But of course she'd said yes. And so he's like, I would love to go see Hook. I haven't seen Hook. And I'm like, and the person said, oh, I slipped and I said, where are you from? And she's like, I'm from Royal Oak. And she's like, it's playing at the local movie theater. So this man's first date with this woman was at the Berkley Theater in March of 1992. And this ring on the finger is from her, and that, well, technically us, and 29 and a half years of marriage later. It means nothing. Please don't pick me for that. But my wife and I have been laughing about that story for like weeks, and I just had to tell it. Thank you for showing a little grace with that one.
Based on your research and understanding of the city, what do you believe are the most important opportunities and challenges for the city in the near term, and how would you approach these?
I think Berkeley, much like the community I live over in Grosse Pointe, has the 3 things that make a community great. And I a lot of times think about it as like the 3 legs of a stool. 3 legs of the stool. You have an amazing community. You've got amazing schools, because that's one of the ways people come to a community like this one. And you have an amazing passion and government to support them. So like opportunity-wise, like the world is your oyster. I mean, you're in southern Oakland County, you're surrounded by all these growing communities. I literally drove up and down every street in this city in the last couple of weeks. Public safety never stopped me, okay? And I come to Berkeley every so often, but I don't like drive to the neighborhood because like that's a mildly creepy thing, but I had a reason to do it, right? And so as I'm driving up and down the streets, I can see you're a community where people are investing. Individual homeowners, the houses, some of them look exactly the same they probably did 30 or 40 years ago, but some of them look a lot different right now. So opportunity-wise, I think this city can figure out what it wants to be because it has all the right legs of the stool. It has all the amazing possibilities. It's this wonderful bedroom community that has an amazing commercial district, and an amazing school district. So that's the opportunities. The challenges, and this is always hard because the 7 of you live here. This is your place, and here's this outsider guy, and I gotta be careful how I say it because you don't want to be almost offensive as you say it. And I'm an outsider, so I don't really know. I mean, I've watched pretty much all of your council meetings from this year. I've read the minutes from previously. I've talked and listened to anybody appropriately within the bounds of ethics that I could talk to about Berkley, okay? I think there are some challenges sitting out there. You have some financial challenges. You're unfortunately living through having not renewed a millage. And I know you would view it as renewal. I know the community views it as a tax increase. Thank you so much, Headley. But I view it as a renewal, as you kind of saw that piece, and it did not work. And I've lived through that inside of my school life, and that is damaging. And figuring out how you move forward from that, and figuring out how we're gonna position ourselves to either decide, okay, we need to do this, go back again in some way or fashion, or no, this is the wrong decision, we can't go back again. But then consequently, what are we gonna do if we don't go back? I think that's a challenge that's facing you. Another challenge that's facing you is, I think it's been I'll find a polite word, it's probably been a complex year to sit up there, right? You've got a new auditor. Change is hard, so no matter if whatever happens, you're looking for a new city manager, that's a big thing, okay? You've got a relatively new member of your council, all right, in Mr. Black. You've got lots of different things, and I imagine you're trying to figure yourselves out. I watched some of your meetings, and it's healthy to have disagreement. In fact, the community kind of likes to see that sometimes, and you did it in a very appropriate, polite way. But I don't think the budget was easy for you when you did this past May. You've got a brand new CFO who started, in January? And Carl seems like he's really smart. Met him today, seen him on the TV, is sitting up here a couple times, knows what he's doing. But those are those challenges sitting there. And I think the last challenge, and then I'll be quiet because I tend to talk a lot, is I think you've got to figure out what's our strategic goals. And maybe you already know this and you're like, John, I already got this one. You're being presumptuous. But I don't know. Do all 7 of you know what's the goal for this year, what's the goal for 3 years from now, and what's the goal for 5 years from now? Have you had those conversations? Because if you know those 3 things, you probably can fix the here and now question. If we can frame our today problem in the context of where are we want to be 1 year, 3 years, 5 years from now, we can almost always answer today's problem through those lenses. But you got to have those lenses figured out almost before you can figure out today, or you're in a reactive place. And that's not a great place to be. So that's a challenge you've got.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go kind of around
Like a
this way
snake
here.
that way?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
I got
Yeah,
you.
it wraps around. Yeah, it's
All
pretty
right.
cool. Yeah. Tell us a bit more about your management and leadership styles, and give us some strengths and weaknesses on both of those, the management and the leadership approaches. Thank you.
Let's stay in that positive space, and let's probably stay in the most important, in my opinion, of those, and that's that leadership place. Leadership's, to me, more important than management. You need to have both. We've all worked for somebody who's great at the big picture stuff and can't do the details. That doesn't always work. But one of my strengths is that from a leadership perspective, bringing people together, providing clarity and transparency so that we can all understand what's our starting point. I tend to think very strategically, kind of drives my wife nuts. We're heading for the first time in our lives, we're going to South America in a week and a half. Our son is studying abroad in Chile, so it's our chance to go to Chile. Never been there before, neither of us speak a lick of Spanish. The John Dean solution to this is, I've had a piece of paper on the fridge that has categories like need to buy, must pack, have to figure out, etc., because for me, that helps me. So my leadership style is to be fairly, not micromanaging, but very strategic in thinking about, okay, I have to do this here, this here, this here to get to that space. That's an area of strength for me. The management piece that I suppose is a strength for me, not suppose, I think is, I have sat in so many different seats, from the HR seat to the ops seat. I've sat next to the CFO. I wrote the communications for my school district in some of the worst, most horrific times. I've sat there. We've worked in schools. You've done some really hard things. The number of times I've sat in an office as both the deputy soup and the soup, and we had a tragedy, let's say a student took their own life, and you have like time-bound opportunity to tell people, because every one of the kids has one of these and it's gonna fly in the next 20 minutes. And I've sat there and I've written that communication to the community. And not terrible, never wanna do it again, but like I sat the seats, so the management piece, I think I have some familiarity. And my general management style is, I don't really hang out in my office. I wander and visit people every day. I tend to have scheduled one-on-ones with my direct reports on a regular basis, and I like to think I'm moderately personable. Well, I like to think really personable, but I'm not sure, okay? So those are some areas that I live in that strength piece. What is one of my things I'm constantly checking? Oh, you're kind of seeing it right now. I can be pretty passionate, and I have some strong views. That doesn't mean my views are right, and I'm not saying I'm arrogant, but I have to remember not everybody wants to dive right in and start on the big picture, that sort of conversation first. And that is one of those things, it's like a slight check on myself on a regular basis. Okay, John, are you too far in front, or are you shoulder to shoulder with all your people? And I'm always level setting myself in that space. I'm aware of it, but it's something I'm regularly level setting myself on. The only other weakness and need I'll have is I've never sat the city manager seat. And I think it's something I can overcome because I've done the leadership piece, and I think I can make the connections and have some of the connections to do the details. But Mr. Baker, that's certainly one of the things that I have plans and thoughts and even written plans on how to do it, but that's something that I'm going to have to figure out.
Cool. Any leadership tips from Eddie Vedder?
Any leadership tips from Eddie Vedder? Oh, okay, all right, you're just kidding. I was going to actually go there for just a second. No.
If you have some pearls of wisdom.
That's a good mirror. I'll go deep cut. We'll talk about it later when this interview's in our rearview mirror. I know that song off 10. Sorry, I digress.
This is awesome.
This is bad.
Bad? Mayor Dean, you said this is bad 10 minutes ago. I'm joking.
No.
You've seen the meetings. You know
yeah,
my...
I mean, he gets to go in and...
All right. It's my fault I activated him.
Oh, boy.
I'm easily,
Okay. What do you consider essential in the relationship between a city manager and the city council, and how will you facilitate a productive relationship with city council?
I have to form a personal, appropriate, pretty detailed relationship with each of the 7 of you first. Each of you is an individual. Each of you, while you represent the citizens of Berkeley, you each have your own beliefs, your own why, your own reasons, kind of your own goals. And I need to have that personal relationship with each of you. And that isn't for me sitting up here. That's for me sitting down with each of you, having a cup of coffee, talking about this, that, or the other thing, talking about Star Wars with Mr. Baker, or whatever it is he likes to talk about. I think I'm right about by that, by the way. Okay? So it's that first having that individual relationship. Okay? As a group, because once we know the person's why, I know Mr. Black's why, or I know Mr. Hennon's why, then I'll have a better understanding, and I'll actually be able to even more better empathize with him when he says this thing, or takes this stance, or has this thought. So as much as I need those individual relationships with you, and you need them with me, we also need to form, as a group of eight individuals, our leadership team. And some things how I would recommend we go about doing that. I think we should have facilitated, whether it's with whoever it is, facilitated retreats, obviously under OMA, the public can come and sit behind us, get all that, and figure out what are our norms, what are our beliefs, how are we going to operate. And you've probably got some ideas and expectations around norms. I have some ideas and expectations around norms. Happy to talk about them if you want to. But you got to get those on the table. Let's talk about that. Okay, are we going to do, one of my favorites is always recommending no surprises. I'll commit, I'll never come to one of your council meetings and surprise you by anything I say. Can you commit to doing the same for me? Doesn't mean I said you'll say everything I like or I'll say everything you like, but we're not going to surprise each other. That's one of the ones I like personally. So we're going to go through some norming exercises. We're going to not just at the beginning, but periodically do that piece. Another thing that I've had great success with was one of the challenges of being a public body is you really can't always have as frank a conversation because OMA says these are some things you can and can't talk about in certain ways. One of the things that's very appropriate, your city attorney will agree with me if he was sitting there and he would nod at this, under OMA, is to go into closed session to talk about the evaluation of an employee, as long as the employee requests it. I'm sure that's how you evaluate your city manager currently. One of the things I would recommend to you, this worked really well for me in my previous contract, I think we should put in there that we're gonna have 4 evaluations a year at my request. We can go in under OMA, we can sit down, appropriately, not talk about business, not make decisions, but we can have a frank conversation because you're giving me feedback on my performance. Hopefully we actually have those facilitated and then I can give you some feedback on how we are doing. Those are all different ways that we could grow together, create some structures together, and move forward together. Did that answer most of your parts of your question, Mr. Hennon?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Sorry, I didn't write that one down. That was my fault. I should have written that one down to make sure I got all the spots.
Mr. Dean, in your answer to Councilmember Baker's question, you mentioned the importance of leadership. This next question is under leadership under stress, and I apologize for having the misfortune of having the longest question of the evening. And
You drew the short straw as the new
if
guy,
at
right?
any point you need me to repeat any portion of it, just ask.
Okay.
As city manager, you will face requests from various stakeholders, residents, city council members, or community groups who may want things that are not feasible or are inconsistent with the city's agreed upon strategic goals. Can you provide an example of a time when you had to say no to such a request? How did you approach the situation? And how did you ensure the individual or group still felt heard and respected?
That is a long one.
I told you.
It's a good one, though. Give me a second. My pause is, and I don't have answers. I'm trying to identify an example that would kind of match. Okay. I was the deputy superintendent during a very painful time in the Grosse Pointe Public Schools. Because of declining enrollment, the district had to do one of its hardest things any school district has to do, and that is they had to make decisions to close schools. That is a very hard thing to do. And that, at the end of the day, while a recommendation from administration, is a decision a Board of Education makes. Okay, so that decision gets made in 2019, right or wrong, gets made. And then, 2 years later, a community group came forward, and one of the schools that had been closed was Tromley Elementary School. And they came forward first to me, individually, I appreciated that. And then they came forward to individual board members, get it, you're elected officials, that happens. And they came to board meetings saying, basically, reopen Tromley. And my heart broke for them because I understood their why. But throughout that process, and it took, I'm shortening and abbreviating the process, the key things for me were to make sure that we listened, and I listened intently, and it was painful, and there were some people that still didn't feel heard, but I will tell you I heard them individually. And then I prepared the school board via my regular communication, and actually that was a special, not just waiting till Wednesday communication, like this thing's coming. And I reminded that Board of Education through the frame of why the decision was made in 2019. I anticipated that one of the things the school board was going to say was, hey, have the financial and enrollment things changed since then so that now we should be reevaluating our decision? I would expect you to ask a question like that, and I expected the board to ask that question. So I was the enrollment guy my whole time I was there, so I got out my projection worksheets and verified it with our enrollment consultant and did all those sorts of things to prepare to answer that why question, and provided the board and the community, because this is about transparency and clarity, not just for the board or the council, but for the community, and we worked our way through that. At the end of the day, the school did not reopen. It was not something, we wish we could have, but at the end of the day, having an elementary school with 92 students in it is just not fiscally or appropriately, or I would argue educationally appropriate. So we couldn't make that decision. But we did it using clarity, transparency, and dignity. And one of the things is I've never had a community member or a community group that I wouldn't meet with. And I was pretty notorious, and I mean that in only a positive way. I probably should have used a better adjective than notorious. for regularly calling out. I'm sure this doesn't happen in Berkeley, but we would have like regular people that came to our board meetings and like said the same sorts of things. And I would pretty regularly call them and say, hey, we got a school board meeting coming up on Monday. Do you have any questions for me ahead of time? Now, eventually we got to a point where they didn't, because I actually figured out, for some of them at least, they actually didn't have a question. They just had this desire to come forward and do the thing. But like, I at least showed them the benefit of the doubt and tried to form a relationship with them and tried to answer as many of their questions even in advance as we could.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How do you hold direct reports accountable for projects and responsibilities that you've delegated to them?
A couple of things come to mind. Over my leadership career, I've become enamored with, I suppose that's a good word for it, enamored with the use of one-on-ones as a regular tool for working with, to having like almost like a structured formal conversation with the people I work with. That helps me. That's something that I tend to have depending on what the need, whether that's weekly, bi-weekly, et cetera, whatever that looks like. That helps me understand where they're at as a person, where they're at in their work, and where they're going. That's a way that helps me, because I find as the supervisor, when I know what they're doing, where they're at in that process, then that's a way to kind of know whether we're going to hit our targets, which to me gets us somewhat close to accountability. Another piece that I am also I've found a lot of success with is creating a sense of community within my direct report team. I tend to be fairly frank with my direct report team. That doesn't mean that I tell them things I shouldn't. I recognize there's lines everywhere, get it. But I tend to be very open with them. I tend to have a lot of structured meetings with them. One of the things that I've always done, had great success with, is I've always had a standing meeting with all my direct reports the day after every school board meeting, and I probably have it in this role after every city council meeting, where we frankly as direct reports debrief on what we saw at the council meeting and are there any things we need to do, follow-ups, this, that, the other thing. Because part of a council's meeting opportunity is to give us feedback on how we're doing. And so they kind of see us do that piece. That's a part that works well for me. Another way that I've found to kind of hold people accountable is if they're involved in the planning and the mapping out of whatever the thing is, it's like that strategy piece, then they're part of it, so holding them accountable to it is something that is easier, if that makes sense. And then the final piece is we owe every one of our employees a regular review. I don't know what your review cycle is here. I don't obviously know what your review tool is here. Lots of good ones out there, probably some bad ones too. But what is our cycle? Just like I want you to regularly give me feedback and evaluate my performance as the city manager, slightly presumptive with that comment, then I would be expecting to do the same thing with all the direct reports I'm working with on a regular basis. And I think that's only fair, and that actually gets us back to what I said at the beginning. That provides clarity. Where do you stand as the director of finance? Where do you stand as, the city clerk? Sorry, Victoria. But I think we owe it to our employees that they know that part. And when I have a relationship, and I'll keep picking on Victoria now, but like if I have a relationship with her, I know her, I know what her job tasks are, she knows what my expectations are, then it's really easy to have the conversation about how are we doing? What are we doing well at? What do we need to grow at? What are some things we need to do differently? That's a conversation that I actually find people are okay with and actually embrace. I think we run away from those conversations too often.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, hopefully this is a slam dunk for you, given that you were the math teacher.
All right.
While recognizing that fiscal policy is set by City Council, please describe your approach to being a steward of public financial resources. Please provide some specific examples from your past experiences that demonstrate your ability to implement fiscal policy and proactively manage a public budget.
I'm going to use a phrase, the polite phrase. John Dean has regularly been called fiscally conservative. My wife would say I'm cheap, okay? And I view the public's money, that's the lifeblood of what we have, and we shouldn't be spending it frivolously. What are some examples of how we've made sure to spend that appropriately? I'll give you some examples. Let me lean into like an HR one. Your biggest cost center are the human beings that come to these buildings. I think last time I looked, you guys are around 70% on your HR spend inside of there. The vast majority of that is tied up appropriately as it should be in direct employment costs and benefit costs. Most of those are going to come out of your various collective bargaining agreements with public safety or different employee groups, et cetera. And then you've got your kind of smaller group of non-affiliated employees. Well, how can you figure out, how can you manage the city's money appropriately if you haven't figured out exactly what each of those cost centers looks like? What is market rate in each of those spaces? Where have we been going with these groups? How much can we afford to pay? What are the cost-benefit analysis? All those sorts of pieces as we go through that. To me, the most significant place that we can make decisions around the city's money are around the people. And that isn't like meant to be threatening or difficult, but that's the single biggest expense we have. You all have pens up there maybe provided by the city. We can get rid of pens in the city of Berkeley, and you're not going to make a dent in any of the costs, okay? So that's an example of a people sort of space. On a less like managing the dollars, we can also talk about growing dollars, okay? I've had significant good fortune doing things with the state of Michigan. So for example, recently wrote a school resource, right before I left, a school resource officer grant to have partial funding for school resource officers for our 2 high schools. Great opportunity for, frankly, our public safety to partner with our local public safety departments. Great opportunity for our kids because done correctly, SROs can make a real big difference for kids. And we did it in such a way that it had almost no impact on the district's budget at the time because we were able to partner with the state of Michigan, because state of money, that was kind of funny. Sometimes the state of Michigan or other entities do have those sorts of pots of money. Also, and this is like, because I'm kind of dorky, this is like something I'm interested in, there are certainly ways to generate revenue inside of a city that schools don't have. You've got your TIF for your DDA. Are you maximizing that? Is that structured the best possible way? I'm guessing, by the way, you're going to have to answer, and I've only been here today, you're going to have to answer a lot of questions about facilities. And I'm assuming you guys have a detailed facilities assessment, hopefully you have a facilities assessment, et cetera. But all those needs are going to cost dollars and cents. And have you mapped out how we're going to get from point A to point B on that? And so then that's where you get even into budgeting versus just even how do we spend the money. But I drove around today. Harrison, the tech guy, gave me this wonderful tour, and I cannot fix a single thing in a single building. Once again, ask my 2 children or my wife, can't fix a thing. But I know there's some things we got to do here. So that becomes a budget priority question, and how do we fiscally do this appropriately, responsibly, with clarity, transparency? Those are all spaces that I've operated in. I've done school bonds and all those sorts of things. And I know cities don't bond the same way all the time, get that. But the concept is basically the same. Identifying for the community our why, our what, getting significant buy-in, and then moving forward by asking our voters to support. I have a much more detailed answer to that. Maybe we get to it later. But those are the things you've got to do to get in those spaces.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. So if you are selected as city manager, Mr. Dean, can you please tell us how you would approach building trust and respect of the elected officials, of the employees, and of the community? And can you please kind of address those groups specifically?
All right. Do you mind, Mr. Gavin, can you give me those one more time? I was in my own headspace and didn't write them all down.
No, that's okay. Elected officials, the staff, and then the community at large.
And it's about building trust, right?
Exactly, yeah. How you would approach building trust and respect of each of those individual groups.
I brought a visual aid. Is that okay? All right. Do you mind if I pass something out? Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Okay.
Watch the cord.
Yeah, God.
Such a teacher.
Okay. This gets us. Oh, I shouldn't talk at the microphone. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. When you came, at least you get the visual aid. Okay. So, I was just asked, how would I go about building trust and respect with the various groups, and the specific groups were the council, the community, and the staff? Did I get that part right?
Yes, sir.
This isn't the only answer, but I said earlier, I'm the strategic guy, the example that I've got my list for chili on the fridge. I couldn't think about this position without thinking about how would I go about doing the role of being a city manager. It's kind of logical. But to me, it isn't about technical work. It's actually first about relationship work. And so I kind of mapped out, and I won't go through every slide in here, but I kind of mapped out like a 90-day plan for myself that is actually completely focused, in my opinion, on what Mr. Gavin asked about, which is building trust with our various groups. So I won't walk us through every slide, but I would turn to like page 4, which my first strategy is develop relationships and listen. Aha, sounds good for me because that's kind of what he just asked, okay? And how would I go about doing that? Well, I already talked a little bit about it. My first bullet, I meet individually with the mayor and each member of the council. Talked about that. We talked about building that relationship piece. I'd meet individually with each member of the director team. How can I build relationships with people if I don't spend time with them, okay? One of the things that worked really well for me when I came to Grosse Pointe in 2012 was I had monthly engagement meetings where I had all my union leadership just meet with me informally once a month, and we just talked about what's going on. And it worked really well. I was able to share things with them about how the school district was going. They were able to say, hey, but this is a thing for my member, this is a thing, this is a thing. Great way to diffuse the situations before they became a thing, and certainly a way to diffuse them before we were in collective bargaining. Let's just have those regular monthly meetings. We're gonna have like relationships when we do that. And then to me, it wouldn't be hard. I started it kind of today. I came here, I would frankly spend like, how can I spend half a day in the clerk's office learning kind of what they do, getting to know the individuals there, doing it not because it's my job to be the clerk, I'm not the clerk. But like, I don't know much about being a clerk. I vote every year, but like, I don't know much about being a clerk, right? So I want to learn that thing. If you flip the next page, it gets to how are we going to do this with the external stakeholders, which I think was the other part of Mr. Gavin's question, okay? I'm a huge fan of just like showing up places, saying to people, hey, let's pick a coffee shop. I'm going to be there, and I like to rotate the times because some people like to go in the morning, sometimes people like to go in the afternoon, some like to go in the evening. But I'm going to be at this coffee shop at 2 in the afternoon every third Thursday. I would typically say to one of you want to join me because it's great to have like someone else to listen to too. Bring another one of my directors with me, and then I just park it there. Always kind of funny because I actually don't drink coffee, but I just park it there. And people come in, they get to know me a little bit, they get to see me a little bit, talk things through, blow off their steam a little bit, way better than doing it at this meeting. Like that's a good thing. I would go to various community groups. I mean, I've been a Rotarian in the past. I think I was Birmingham, I was in the Kiwanis. But like I go present at those, introduce myself, do all those sorts of pieces. There's obviously some movers and shakers in the community, and I probably want to do that soon. I want to talk to Scott Francis. I met Mike, he's actually right behind me still, okay? I actually met Darlene today, the Berkley Chamber of Commerce individual. I think she was one of the people there. I was chatting with her. She was sitting and I was sitting there. But like, and I just, not an exhaustive list, but like, how do I form those relationships? How do I start doing that sort of thing? That's how I'd start building the relationship. And frankly, I like to think, yes, I'm a fast talker, but I'm also like not too much of an ogre. I think I'm a nice guy. I can be kind of self-deprecating because I know that I'm a fast talker and I've done stuff. So one of the ways you like make people feel comfortable is like you kind of talk about yourself and like kind of make fun of yourself a little bit, which I'm kind of good at because I have a lot to make fun of. See there, I did it. And that's how I would go about doing that sort of piece. And then I'd come to you guys and say, okay, what are like the 5 or 6 people or groups I need to know about in Berkeley? I think I might have met a couple of them in the garage earlier, by the way. But like, I'd like to know, who are those people? Who are the people I should be talking to? Is there a mover or shaker group that I wouldn't know about, but you maybe are like, hey, there's this group of 65-year-old dudes who show up at Einstein's every third Monday, and like that's the group you want to spend time with? Okay, cool. Let's go get a bagel. Everyone can eat a bagel. I'll sit there and have a conversation with them.
Great, thank you. Just a quick follow-up. So specifically,
Yes.
I'm wondering, and I'd like to say this is certainly not a local government specific issue or a school district issue or anything like that, so don't feel the need to say you got to fix it or know what the necessarily what the end-all be-all answer is, but how would you work to try to address misinformation provided by stakeholders either at a public meeting or on social media, and sort of what sort of personal attributes do you think it takes to handle some of that information?
First off, you gotta have like a cool, calm approach to this. You gotta realize it isn't personal. I'm sure this doesn't happen in Berkeley, but in Grosse Pointe, we have these very unhealthy Facebook forums where people say like some horrific things, okay? Never would happen here, right? Well, we have to remember it's actually not personal. That's the first piece. And people go to those sites for one of two reasons. One, because they want to commiserate and vent, can't do much about that. But sometimes people are going there to get information. Aha, we can do something about that. What if we were proactive enough about our communication? What if we were transparent enough about our communication and honest enough about our communication, and we became the place that people relied on for information? So we're going to be proactive about it. So let me give you an example. Let's just say for a second, okay, that you were in a spot where you were going to have a budget variance. Let's assume it's a negative variance. Let's go to a negative variance. You're coming up to your Second Amendment. Second Amendment for you is probably what, middle of winter, somewhere in that space, okay? And you're coming into Second Amendment, and Carl lets me know as the city manager, John, we're gonna miss by 3%. That's a decent sized miss, okay? Well, one, I need to tell you guys about it, so like you know what's coming. But since we're gonna talk about it at the next meeting, what if we had communication ready to go that said, this is where we're at, this is where we planned on being, this is where we're at now, and these are the 5 reasons how we got from A to B to C to D to E. And I don't know what the right thing in Berkeley is. I don't know if it's the website, I don't know if it's your Facebook account, I don't know if it's your Instagram, or if it's all of those things. Let's get that information out there. Another one that I've had good success with, and I don't know the scope of your community relations department. I know you have a community relations department. Her, correct?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just used the word her. My wife would hate me. I apologize. Remind me what's your name again? Caitlin. I'm sorry, Caitlin. I can do better than that. Okay. But like, I don't know what her capacity is, but I had significant luck with or good fortune, communications people actually going on pages as the Grosse Pointe Public Schools person and posting factual information. Now, there's a line there. We don't want to get into a back and forth and like this sort of space, but can we post factual information? Could we post a hyperlink in that really toxic Facebook group back to our website so people could get factual information? Those are all strategies that I've found some success with. Now, at the end of the day, social media and these things are still not going to make it easy, and you're not going to like win it all, and we're not going to sing Kumbaya with every single member of the community, or if we do, like that'd be awesome, but I don't think it's going to happen. But like, I think we can make some progress as long as we're proactive in those spaces.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
How do you ensure that the needs and concerns of the community are incorporated into the city decision-making processes?
Can I give you a specific example that will illustrate it a bit?
Please.
All right. 2014, 10 years ago, I was the relatively new deputy superintendent in the Grosse Pointe schools. We had some technology needs. One of the things that you can, in a school finance world, go out for a bond issue with is technology. There's some limits there because you got to look at capital assets, usable life, all those sorts of things. But the superintendent viewed himself as a tech person. That wasn't me. And so he basically, along with our tech director, wrote like a tech bond for $44 million and talked to the board in public, but he wrote it kind of in public, got the board to support it, and asked the voters for $44 million. I want to say it was like 2.1 mils over 10 years or something like that at that time. Every community, this one included and Grosse Pointe, has like some anti-tax elements to it. Totally get that, understand that. I don't like to spend money on taxes either. None of you guys do either, okay? And people started coming to the microphone, people started asking questions, and because the plan had been written by 2 humans, didn't go so well, and we lost by 11 points. I wasn't personally surprised, although I was at the victory party because I was the deputy superintendent. It was my job to be at the victory party. I remember telling my wife, this probably ain't going to be a victory party like by 7:15 that day or whatever time the polls close. So we lose. Brutal. I know you've been through this. You lose a voter issue, you got to wait a while. You got to figure some things out. And we got a new superintendent, probably partly because of that, wasn't me, named Gary, good guy, talk to Gary all the time still. Gary comes in and he's like, John, we've got some real facilities needs. We did. And he's like, I think we need to do something about it. I'm like, agree, boss. He's like, how do we need to do this? I'm like, oh, we got to do it completely different than the last thing we tried to do, or we're just going to have a disaster. And I explained to him, okay, this is how we got here. So here's what we did. We actually went back to our community, held listening sessions, in particular advertising. To those of you who did not support the tech bond, please come. We want to hear from you. What didn't you like about it? Those were hard meetings. Those were meetings that were not pleasant. Didn't like them, but they were critically important. We did a lot of listening. One of the things we heard was we hadn't provided clarity. Okay, well, no one could or should believe John Dean if he says we need a new boiler or the roof is going bad or this, that, or the other thing, because I can't fix or do any of those things. So we had a facilities study done by an outside third party, true experts, came in, paid for it, cost some money, paid for it. That went all over the website. Like, we had meetings just to explain the facility study. Not to say this is what you should do with this information, but just to say this is the information. $270 million in critical needs. Identified, like, here's things that need to be done in the next 3 years, in 3 to 7 years, 7 to 10 years, and beyond 10. Like, graphs, pictures, all the stuff. It was all over our website. We're holding meetings just to talk about it. All right, we're talking about it. Gary let me organize, we had a blue ribbon committee. We had three school board members, not 4 because of OMA, 3 school board members. We ended up inviting 65 people, union presidents, clergy, community members, the loud people in the community, a bunch of the naysayers in the community, a bunch of our supportive people in the community. We put these 63-ish people in a room, up on a stage, made them open meetings, even though under OMA we didn't have to, still think that was the right decision. And we had meetings to talk about, let's start ripping apart the $270 million in critical needs. What do we really think is a critical need? What do we really map it out? We did all this heavy lifting. We're moving stuff around, ripping plans apart. 6 meetings, I think over 2.5 months, come up with a blue ribbon recommendation. Guess what? It was no longer the board's plan. It wasn't the superintendent's plan. It wasn't my plan. It was the Blue Ribbon's plan. Oh, who was the Blue Ribbon? A bunch of community members. Made it easy for the board to say, let's move forward with a $111 million bond issue. Big bond issue, not huge by school standards, but significant. That was what the community wanted. Even though we had $270 million, the Blue Ribbon Committee said $111 million. Cool, let's do it. Took it out to our community members. Because we had so much community support, as you know, we can't tell people how to vote. That would be a violation of the law. We can provide lots of information, clarity and transparency. Because we had so much input from the community, we had community groups saying basically, we'll run a vote yes campaign. Cool, you can do that. Let's keep that arm's length. Please, keep that kind of far away, but I'm happy you're doing it. And did that, and it won by 11 points. We had a 22-point swing between 2014 and 2018. So does that help a little bit, give you an example?
Yes, it's perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I get going. I'm sorry. My wife told me she's like, John, calm it down. I'm like, sweetie, I just can't. I get excited about this stuff. The leadership piece is fun.
I can see.
Anything else? Okay.
I'm good.
Yeah, and this is without even any coffee, too. I think that's
This isn't. No,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
If I did coffee, there'd be problems for everybody. It'd be bad.
Well, I have the unfortunate task of asking you the last prepared question.
All right.
I know it's disappointing.
You can make more. I mean, I'm actually enjoying this in a different way, right?
And
Feeling good about it.
Well, I've got lots of, but we'd love to hear your questions, time permitting, as well. So I'll try to get to this here.
Got it.
So how do you balance the need for long-term strategic planning with the day-to-day operational and tactical needs of the city? What are some strategies or approaches that you've used?
Hopefully, and I talked about this earlier, we've got a 1, 3, and a 5-year long-term plan. And if we don't, and I end up being your city manager, I'm going to encourage us to have that piece. Because the long-term plan can never be figured out in the moment. The long-term plan has to be identified probably when there isn't pressure of time or expectations, but we can put ourselves together and we have this long-term plan, and then we can fit into it the day-to-day things. Now, there are certain day-to-day things that are always going to be, we have to do this first, okay? So if I get the phone call at 7 in the morning and I'm your city manager, and it's your DPW and Brad was the guy from sewers today. I think Brad was his name. And Brad calls me, not that he would call me, but let's just pretend for a second this happens, and says, John, the sewers broke underneath Coolidge at 12 Mile, it's flooding. Disaster, that's important. That's gonna trump all the other things. Do you know what I'm saying? How do we communicate this? How do we work with public safety? How do we work with DPW? That is gonna become the thing of the day, okay? And we have to recognize, we have to be good at recognizing what are the things that are true emergencies that we have to do in the exact moment. You know, so the example of like that sewer piece. My worst day, maybe not in my life, that's melodramatic. My worst day as a leader. A year and a half ago, I was going to work, having a normal day, what I thought was a normal day, and I got a phone call at 5 in the morning from one of my building principals. The timing might be off, but I got it early that morning, that there had been a shooting at Michigan State. Do you remember that terrible student shooting? And I was from Musa Hamka. Musa's the principal at Grosse Pointe South. And Musa calls me and says, John, it was one of our South kids who graduated, Grosse Pointe South, who graduated the previous year, died in that shooting. And I'm like, oh no. Well, unfortunately, we have a crisis response plan. I've done it way too many times in my life because you've got 7,000 kids, things can happen, right? So we enact the entire plan, we put it in place. That was a drop everything moment. And just as an aside, the worst moment of my life when I was sitting at Grosse Pointe South managing that, and Kate Murray, the principal from North, called and said, John, we lost one of our kids in the shooting. And I said, you got it wrong. That was a South kid. And she's like, no, it's also a North kid. So like that took over everything. And the next 4 weeks, that's all we did as a community. We grieved, we communicated, we did those sorts of pieces. There was nothing long-term going on in the Grosse Pointe Public Schools for those 4 weeks because the moment had to be taken care of in that time. Those, however, just like the sewer break, are few and far between. Most of the things that come up inside of government in general can fit inside of, where do these fit inside of our buckets of 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan? And I think most of the time we can categorize them and keep in those sorts of spaces. I think that's something we can do. And then part of our job as leaders is to realize, except when we get the sewer or the tragedy, most of the time we don't have to make a decision right in the moment. We can actually take a little time, breathe a couple breaths, talk to a couple people, call maybe someone else who's lived through it. Like, I don't know who exactly I'm gonna call as a city manager. If I become your city manager, I know Nate a little bit, so like I might call Nate for some advice, or you guys might say bad idea, which cool, I won't call Nate. But like, I'll need some people to call, okay? But like, they can help ground me too, and like, John, that's like a level 3 emergency, that's not like a 10, we don't need to have that level of response, and we work our way through that piece.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, John, we've got just a few minutes left, but I do have some time here for you to ask the city council a question. If you have one, please prioritize and ask a question of them.
What's the most significant challenge you're facing in the next year?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would say the most significant challenge that we're facing, and you can probably also frame it as an opportunity, is that we've had a year of a lot of turnover. And we're bringing in a new leader who is going to have to work within the constraints that we already have. We have several key department leadership positions open, and so new people will need to be brought in. And with all of that is bringing the team together and getting everybody on the same page. And on top of that, next year, it's also an election year for council members. So as you're getting everybody on board, there's a chance that some of us might be changing seats as well. So just as you get settled, there could be some different voices up here too. So I would say over the next year, the biggest challenges is going to be getting the team in place and getting everyone on the same page to be able to move forward together.
Thank you, Councilmember Malani. Anyone else want to take a stab at it, or do?
Councilmember Hannan.
I'd build on that, somewhat related, is just getting our processes and procedures, documented, and, so when we have these transitions, the knowledge doesn't leave with the people. Cross-training, those sorts of things.
Okay. Thank you.
I would say, oh, go ahead.
After you, please.
Okay. I would say for me, when I just look at our budgeting process, and I mentioned this earlier, I'm a proponent of a budget booklet, more like ClearGov, for example, that will map out your capital equipment, capital improvements, along with the facilities inventory, so that, you know, everything's laid out, it's clear, we can see where the needs are, and to your point, prioritizing which things are the most dire, what do we need to tackle first. We have a community center that was a 25-year building that just celebrated its 50th birthday. There's a crack in the foundation. We got a grant to fix the roof that was leaking in many places, and the doors are constantly jamming, but I believe those have been repaired as well. So at a certain moment, we're gonna have to make some decisions, not just about that, but all of our facilities and our buildings. We're all aging.
Yes.
So I see that as a significant challenge, not just for, I mean, in the immediate sense, getting a budgeting program, but then as a longer-term way to measure and prioritize.
Makes sense. It ties in, actually, and we didn't get to it, but the third goal in my 90-day roadmap was to, like, calendar out the year and calendar out where we're going. You might have that. It might already exist, so, like, I'm not trying to tell you I have your calendar, but at least for me, I got to know where we're going. I mean, to me, that's really important. I mean, in the schools world, we're on the exact same budget cycle as you, July 1 to June 30. So, like, I'm used to that. I'm guessing you're starting, and this is October 1, right? You're probably starting your budget conversations typically in December-ish or early-ish to start mapping out so you can get to where you need. I know last year you had so much turnover, but, like, yeah, you got to start planning out those sorts of pieces, yeah.
I guess I just add to all these excellent observations and challenges is underlining all of that. You may have noticed many of our questions deal with communication and establishing trust. I think all of these will benefit. The approaches that we come up with to address these challenges will benefit from a clear and consistent communication approach. We have great talent on the team, and it's just you know, sticking with it, building up that trust. I think that that's one of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's one of the foundational aspects that that we're going to need to do so that we can assemble the team and get everybody on the same page, and we can document the processes and stuff so that the operational aspects are sustainable over time as the team changes, and as we develop and communicate the budget that so many of us are, well, that's one of our core functions.
Sure. Fiduciary responsibility.
And to your earlier comment about trusting the public's dollars, right? It's not my money, it's not our money, it's the residents' money, and so we need to be very prudent with that. So I think underlining all of that is the communication and trust.
Absolutely.
I would just summarize it to where do we want to go, how do we want to get there, do we have the right people, right resources, right processes to get us there,
Thank you,
and getting people to get behind that as a community again.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's pretty much the same. As Councilmember Black said before, a leader. We need somebody to lead us, guide us, our staff, and you know, that we can trust and support not only us but our community. You've met some of them. You said, I mean, they're a great community.
They are
passionate. They're, you know, we all live here. I mean, we're residents, so we need somebody to lead us and guide our staff and get us to the next level, wherever that may be.
All right, with that, John, I'll leave you with like the last 30 seconds. You can certainly respond to some of what you just heard, but please close your interview with whatever you'd like to leave City Council with.
I'll start with a thank you. Life is this journey, and we all grow from every experience we have, and I feel like, so just thank you. You gave me a chance to grow today. Appreciate it. I tell school HR, I teach school HR down at Wayne State, and one of the things I explain is that the interview is not a one-way experience, that it's a two-way experience, that if you know a couple things, and maybe when you're a 22-year-old kid like that guy thought he was going to be Eddie Vedder, maybe you didn't know this part then, but like I think I know now that you're interviewing me, but I'm interviewing you, and I was doing that all day today, you know, trying to figure out, is this a fit? I mean, I'm in this really unique spot that I want to find exactly the right thing. I've got 10 more years where I still like want to do a lot of stuff, and I'm trying to find that right spot. And, you know, I've applied to Berkeley, talked to James about it, did my research, watched the meetings. I'm like, yeah, this could work. This feels pretty good. Like, I get a good vibe on it. But at the end of the day, you were just two-dimensional. You're on my screen, on my computer screen, and with this static camera and with the formality of the meeting and all those sorts of pieces, it's not the best way to, like, get, it's almost like trying to find your special someone and only ever going to Thanksgiving dinner. Awkward. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how else to say about it, right? But that's how it is. So like today was a chance to like get to know some people, to see some things, and to get a chance to know some of you. I appreciate that all 7 of you took time out to come see us awkwardly in a fire hall, walk around and chat with people. I like that part, by the way. But I just want to say, going back to that piece I say, interviewing both ways, you're interviewing me. I feel like I was interviewing you. And this is one of those things where I walk away going, I hope this thing works out because I feel pretty good, darn good about today. So now you're going to make the best decision you can. I'm confident you're going to make it. And, you know, if it's me, like, I'm all in. That would be awesome. I've said awesome too many times. I sound like a surfer. But, like, I also know that if it doesn't work out, you're still going to find the right person. But I feel really good about today, and I feel really good about the opportunity. So thank you all.
Thank you, John. For council, please stay for about 1 minute. I'll walk the candidate out, and then we'll come back. I'll give you a quick closing, and then you can close your meeting if that's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do you mind if I walk around and shake hands?
No,
Is that
of
okay?
course.
I got to do that piece. Thank you. It was so nice to meet you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
I read that Eddie Vedder's an excellent surfer, so
He is
yeah.
actually a huge surfer.
Yeah, yeah.
It took me a while, then I caught the WDFN connection on LinkedIn. I was like, I knew that name. Nice to see you. Nice to see both of you. I better take my phone with me, or that'll be a problem.
I will. Oops, sorry, Bridget.
It would have. But, you know,
Survivable.
totally.
The chairs didn't sink.
They did not. Were you waiting for him to sing?
No, this was a longer meeting.
Yeah.
Well,
Our chairs
I was
chaired.
surprised when I sat down at first and this seat was high. Can test this now. Let's see. Yep, I've got
What's wrong?
there's a
Belly button ring?
open panel here
Oh, yeah.
that if I bump causes that static.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's you who causes it.
Yeah, don't lick that thing.
Well, thank you very much for your time this evening. Just a quick summary. The candidates all did very well in their meetings with the department heads. I think the meet and greet went well as well. Your next steps are to receive the feedback that we will receive from both community members and your department heads, and employees. Employees also have been urged to fill out the feedback forms. And I'll leave a few here if there were any employees that were watching that wish to give you some feedback by 10 a.m. tomorrow. Your next meeting is Monday, October 7th at 5:30 is a special meeting. At that meeting, you'll consider your candidates and potentially select your preferred candidate. If there's any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. But other than that, our business is concluded.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Vitrino? Steve?
Just gratitude, appreciation, the professionalism and the process that you brought to this was stellar. The sequence of how we move through these things in a responsibly expeditious manner, I think has really helped us focus on our decision and less about the process to make the decision, because it's been very thorough, and so it kept us in the right lane to do what we need to do, and I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
Motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Gavin with support from Councilmember Patterson. Ms. Mitchell, please call the roll.
Gavin,
Yes.
Hennan,
Yes.
Patterson.
Yes.
Valani,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Black,
Yes.
Dean.
Yes. The Tuesday, October 1st special meeting is adjourned.